Chapter 301. The passenger next to Xiao Jin was a man with a big belly and a big waist. He looked to be in his 30s. He was dressed in gold and silver and looked a little fierce. When he saw Xiao Jin sitting next to him, his eyes lit up. Musichu came forward and asked him politely, "Hello, brother. My sister and I are together, but our tickets are different. Can we change seats?" As long as the guest agreed, the seats in the economy class could be changed. However, the man didn't appreciate it. "Why should we change? I'm used to this seat." Musilian couldn't help but complain, "What's so good about the edge seats? Do you like the aisle?" The man immediately revealed a fierce expression. "What does it have to do with you? If you're so arrogant, why don't you take first class?" Before Musilian could curse, he was stopped by Musichu. On Xiao Jin's left was a woman carrying a child. She looked at them and was a little surprised, but she didn't dare to cause trouble. The child was sleeping. Musichu and the others walked to their seats and asked if they could change seats. However, the young man sitting next to them was a little scared when he saw the big man and subconsciously shook his head and refused. Xiao Jin sat in her seat with a calm expression. It was just that the economy class was narrow. The model of this plane was relatively old, unlike many large international flights. They could only say that they were unlucky. The seat wasn't that big. When the man sat down, his body was already big and muscular. When he leaned to the side, it was as if he was leaning against Xiao Jin's armrest, taking up all of her space. Now that they were close, she could even smell the disgusting oily smell of the man. It was really oily. How many days had it been since he washed his hair? Xiao Jin frowned. She couldn't lean to the side. Next to her was a woman carrying a child. It would be easy to squeeze others. Musichu also noticed Xiao Jin's predicament, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Just then, a timid voice came from behind Xiao Jin. "Xiao Jin, do you want to switch seats with me? I'm by the window." Xiao Jin turned around and saw that it was the girl who was dressed in ordinary clothes and had low self-esteem. She looked at Xiao Jin with some hesitation. Xiao Jin shook his head and smiled. "It's okay. I'll sit here. You can go sit." The girl hesitantly glanced at the man next to him and could only return to her seat. "I told you to pretend to be a good person. Duan Ruyan, why are you so shameless?" When she passed by the seats of her classmates, a male classmate gave her a disgusted look. Her body trembled, and the male classmate reached out to grab her arm and said in a low voice, "Don't get close to people you can't afford to offend." Duan Ruyan's body trembled even faster. When the other passengers looked at him strangely, the boy did not dare to cause trouble and quickly let go of her. Duan Ruyan returned to her seat as if she was escaping. Fortunately, when the teacher came up, he noticed Xiao Jin's predicament. Musichu also whispered something to the teacher. The male teacher walked over and switched seats with Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin agreed this time. The fierce-looking man saw this scene and did not know what to say. He could only watch as Xiao Jin left from the other side with a regretful expression. It was rare to see such a beautiful and classy girl. What a pity. Bastard who ruined his plans. He glared fiercely at the male teacher. Chapter 302. Xiao Jin swapped seats, and the male teacher happened to sit in front of Duan Ruyan. When she saw Xiao Jin coming over, Duan Ruyan was a little surprised. The stewardess came over to greet all the passengers. When they noticed Xiao Jin, they were a little surprised, and their smiles became even more charming. The plane began to take off. Two young girls were sitting next to Xiao Jin. Although they were surprised by Xiao Jin's beauty, they were too embarrassed to talk. After the plane began to take off, they took out their tablets to watch TV. They wore headphones and had their own entertainment. The flight time of more than 10 hours was boring. Musilian and Musichu were already prepared for this. They asked Xiao Jin to download some TV dramas and watch them by herself, so that she would not be too bored. Sometimes, she would feel Duan Ruyan's gaze, but before that, they did not know each other. After an unknown period of time, the child suddenly cried. Then came the sound of the woman coaxing the child awkwardly. Actually, the child stopped crying after a few cries. Qiao Jin noticed that the child was the child of the woman who had been sitting next to her. However, before the child could cry, a fierce voice rang out, crying, 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 "Where's your mother? Isn't it annoying to cry? Why did you bring the little boy on the plane if he wanted to cry? Aren't you embarrassed to disturb others' sleep? Fuck." His words were louder than the child's cries. It was so loud that half of the passengers who were gradually falling asleep on the plane woke up. The stewardess heard the noise and hurried over. The child actually stopped crying, but he was frightened by this sentence again and began to cry. Then, there was the woman's awkward apology and coaxing voice. There was another earth-shattering scolding. A passenger complained, "The child didn't cry much. He only cried twice. You're shouting louder than him. You're disturbing others' sleep." The fierce-looking man immediately scolded, "What does it have to do with you? Son of a bitch." His filthy mouth immediately scared the passenger who was speaking, and he didn't dare to open his mouth again. Of course, the stewardess quickly advised them that nothing could happen on the plane. Otherwise, they would have to make an emergency landing. The troublemakers would also be detained. Probably thinking of this, the man didn't dare to do anything. After cursing a few times, he unbuckled his seatbelt and prepared to go to the bathroom. The bathroom was at the back, and he had to walk past Qiao Jin when he walked through the corridor. When he saw Qiao Jin, his eyes lit up. When he walked over, he pretended to be unsteady, and his huge body fell on Qiao Jin. If he fell down, his waist would hit Qiao Jin's face. That scene could not be described as just disgusting. However, just as he was about to fall, he suddenly felt an inexplicably powerful force pushing him from behind. He staggered a few steps, as if he really did lose his footing, and directly fell down, landing on the corridor. Boom. If it wasn't for the fat on his back, he probably would have fallen hard. This gave the stewardess a huge fright. The passengers were dumbfounded at first, then some of them couldn't help but smile. "Serves you right." The man stood up in shock and anger. "Which one of you pushed me?" However, when he looked back, the corridor he walked through was empty. The passengers on both sides were sitting just right. The stewardess came from the other side. It was impossible for anyone to stand up and push him so quickly. He was nearly 200 pounds. It was not easy to push him. He was shocked and angry when he couldn't find the culprit. On the way back, everyone looked like the culprit. He looked even fiercer. He didn't suspect the people around Qiao Jin. After all, they were all in his sight. Who could push him? Chapter 303. The 10-hour-long flight was quite fast. There was no trouble in the second half of the flight, so she had a good night's sleep. When she got off the plane, it was drizzling in America. The moist air entered her nose. The air in this foreign country was no different from the air in China. She took the umbrella and got off the plane. Musilian and Musichu followed her. Musilian looked at the man in the distance. He saw that the man was staring at Qiao Jin. His lecherous eyes were exposed. Musilian scolded fiercely, "If you look at me again, I'll dig your eyeballs out." He couldn't hold it in on the plane. Now that he got off the plane, he had nothing to worry about. Of course, he scolded him. The man glared at Musilian. He seemed like he wanted to scold him back. However, when he saw Musichu and the others standing together, he was scared and could only leave. Musilian spat, "What a disgusting thing. Brother, let me tell you. Next time, no matter what, you must take the first-class cabin." Not everyone was like that, but it was still disgusting to meet such a weirdo. Musichu didn't object this time. Qiao Jin looked at the man's back as he left, and only smiled. The male teacher announced for them to gather. It was daytime when they arrived here. However, they had been on the plane for more than 10 hours. What they needed now was rest. The hotel had been booked. They just needed to go to the hotel. The bus was already waiting outside. The school had arranged everything very well. They went to collect their luggage and got on the bus. The bus was very empty. Musilian and Musichu sat together. Qiao Jin sat in front of them. No one dared to sit beside Qiao Jin. Someone whispered, "Why is she always holding that umbrella?" "I don't know. She likes it. Maybe there's something wrong with her." Really, they spoke very softly, not daring to let Xiao Jin and Musichu hear them. Xiao Jin heard it, but she did not respond. He just looked at the light rain outside the window. Duan Ruyan's gaze lingered on Xiao Jin. This timid girl was sitting in the corner. They looked at Xiao Jin with envy and hope. What a luminous being she was in the light. When they arrived at the hotel, Musilian couldn't hold it in anymore. He often came overseas to play. Coincidentally, Mu Chiji was also working in a company in the US. Moreover, they were in the same city. Musilian directly told the teacher that they would bring their sister to look for Big Brother, and the teacher agreed. But when he told Xiao Jin about it, Xiao Jin didn't agree. She said lightly, "I'm not in a hurry to see Qi, I want to rest first." Musilian's eyes widened. "Didn't you sleep for more than 10 hours on the plane?" He had noticed that Xiao Jin didn't wake up much the entire time. To be able to sleep for more than 10 hours in such an environment, Xiao Jin was really impressive. Xiao Jin said, "I'm just very tired. I want to rest." Since she said so, Musilian naturally couldn't force her. However, he didn't like to stay in the hotel. Moreover, the room was too small. He asked the front desk to change to a bigger room. The teachers turned a blind eye and couldn't be bothered. As long as she was there, it was fine. Xiao Jin didn't change. Musichu saw that Xiao Jin didn't go over and hesitated for a moment. After confirming that Xiao Jin would stay in the hotel and not go anywhere, he went to look for Mu Chiji with Musilian. Chapter 304. The hotel room had 2 single beds for 2 people. She was assigned to the same room as Duan Ruyan. Duan Ruyan was a little excited when she heard the teacher let her stay in the same room as Xiao Jin, but the other students were in disbelief. One of them even blurted out, "Teacher, isn't this inappropriate?" Before the teacher could speak, Xiao Jin said coldly, "I think it's appropriate." No one dared to say anything when she spoke. Although Xiao Jin's matter had caused a stir in the school, everyone now knew that she was Musilian's sister. In other words, she was the daughter of the Mu family. They did not dare to provoke her. Zhongli Shiyu and Zhongli Peining also separated. However, they were also rich and willful. They went to the hotel and changed to a high-end suite. They did not want to stay in the same room as other students. When they returned to the room, Duan Ruyan pushed her suitcase in. When she saw Xiao Jin, she could not help but feel ashamed. She said softly, "Xiao Jin, if you need any help, just let me know." "Let me know?" Xiao Jin seemed to be surprised by this word. He turned to look at her and said, "What do I need to tell you? Shouldn't you be helping me?" Duan Ruyan's face stiffened. She said that because she was used to it. She was ordered around by those people. Every time they wanted her to do something, they just ordered her to do it. The help that Xiao Jin said did not exist. However, she was too embarrassed to say it. This had nothing to do with Xiao Jin. She could only hide her grievances in the bottom of her heart. No one else needed to know. Xiao Jin retracted his gaze and said, "I don't need your help." "Student Duan, is this your first time in the United States?" Duan Ruyan nodded embarrassedly and said, "Yes." This was her first time going abroad. She studied hard and finally got the chance to go to school. Fortunately, she applied for it. Unlike most of the other students, she did not have an excellent family background. She could only rely on her own efforts. Other than this, she did not have any other merits worth mentioning. Duan Ruyan put down her suitcase and looked at Xiao Jin carefully. This was the most beautiful girl she had ever seen. The tip of her eyebrows and the corners of her eyes exuded a smoky temperament. She really looked like a fairy who lived in the heavenly palace. Even talking to him felt like blasphemy. Wasn't this blasphemy? For someone like her, it was a great honor to be able to speak with Xiao Mu. Xiao Jin stayed in the room for a while. Then, he took out the tablet and looked at it. Duan Ruyan thought that Xiao Jin was studying, so she didn't dare to make a sound when she was busy. She was afraid that she would disturb Xiao Jin. In fact, Xiao Jin was looking for local tourism information in America to gain some knowledge. She basically had no pressure when it came to language. At this moment, Xiao Jin noticed that Duan Ruyan had taken out her old smartphone. Her face stiffened for a moment as if she had seen something. When she subconsciously raised her head to look at Xiao Jin had already retracted his gaze. "Student Xiao, I'm going out for a while," Duan Ruyan whispered to Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin nodded, and Duan Ruyan tiptoed out of the room. After she left, Xiao Jin put down the tablet and followed her out. When she went out, she tilted her head and glanced at the wall. A devil's face appeared on the wall. It looked at her and was still as ferocious as ever. Chapter 305. When Duan Ruyan arrived downstairs, there were already 3 men and a woman waiting in the hotel lobby. The woman had an average height and a medium figure. Her skin was fair, and she was wearing exquisite makeup. The other 3 men each had their own characteristics, but they were not very eye-catching in the team led by Musilian and Musichu. One of the men had been in contact with Duan Ruyan on the plane. When the woman saw Duan Ruyan, who was late, she waited until Duan Ruyan came closer before she scolded in a low voice, "We've been waiting for you for so long. What were you doing upstairs? Do you really think you're a phoenix just because you're in the same room as the Mu family? A chicken is a chicken. Do you really think you can fly to the top? She only thinks highly of you because she thinks you're above everyone else. Do you really think that someone like her would take a fancy to you?" A series of harsh words pierced Duan Ruyan's heart, but she just blinked and replied timidly, "I was waiting for the elevator for a long time. I'm sorry, Miss Yao." Yarrow Hongyin glared at her bitterly. Although she was scolding her, she secretly hated that she had not been assigned to the same room as Xiao Jin. Otherwise, she would have been the one living with Xiao Jin. If she had a good relationship with them, she would not have to worry about not being able to enter the Mu brothers' social circle. After a long time, everyone knew the relationship between the Musilian brothers and Xiao Jin. Of course, judging from their attitude, even if Xiao Jin was not the biological daughter of the Mu family, she was better than their biological daughter. These people could not tolerate looking down on her. Of course, not everyone in a key university had such qualities and thoughts, but the difference in environment was too big. They were also geniuses who had been admitted to other universities, but their mentality gradually became distorted as they compared with each other. Their families were not poor, but they were well off. They thought they could have a better life, but they did not expect the students here to have such a big family. Some people worked hard, and some people were willing to fall. Duan Ruyan could be said to be from the poorest family, so of course, she became the target of their bullying. When the other boys saw that there were foreigners staring at them, they realized that the cultures of the 2 countries were different. Afraid of causing misunderstandings, they said to Yarrow Hongyin, "Well, Hongyin, don't waste time with her. It's almost time for our appointment with Peter. Don't be late for the first time and leave a bad impression on him." Yarrow Hongyin nodded. "Okay." When Duan Ruyang heard them talking about Peter, who she had never heard of before, she was confused and scared. "What are you talking about? Where are we going? Have you told the teacher?" "Of course I told the teacher." Yarrow Hongyin reached out and grabbed Duan Ruyan's arm. She was strong and grabbed Duan Ruyan like she was holding a chick. "It's none of your business where we're going." This time, it was different from the past. They were abroad. If anything happened, Duan Ruyan might not even have time to contact the teacher. She instinctively felt scared and shook her head desperately. "I still have some homework to do. You've already told the teacher that I don't have the teacher's permission. Why don't we just forget about it?" "Of course we've told the teacher that you have to go too." The other 3 men also pushed Duan Ruyan. Duan Ruyan was no match for them, so she could only be half forced out of the hotel lobby. After they left, Xiao Jin's figure slowly appeared behind her. Chapter 306. The summer in the United States was the same as in China. The humid heat wave hit the hotel's surroundings. The air conditioner in the hotel was on, so it did not feel so much. Xiao Jin was wearing a white shirt, slender jeans, and a pair of limited white sneakers. She looked fresh and elegant. Her waist-length seaweed hair made people feel that she was a siren from the sea, which attracted the attention of many foreigners. The aesthetics between the 2 countries were not very similar, but looking at Xiao Jin, there was a particularly comfortable beauty and temperament. At least foreigners would not think of her as ugly. She was probably a legendary Oriental beauty. She was indeed extraordinary. Most of her daily clothes were arranged by Qiao Fei. Her aesthetics were good, so she never made a mistake when matching Qiao Jin. Of course, she looked good, and the sack was not easy to make mistakes. She watched Duan Ruyan being pulled away by Yarrow Hongyan and the others. Her face was full of reluctance. The surrounding walls surged with layers of black air, extending out from the hotel. Except for her, no one else could see such a situation. Zhongli Peining and Zhongli Shiyu were eating delicacies alone in the hotel lobby. When they caught a glimpse of Qiao Jin, they immediately became alert. Their mission was to monitor Qiao Jin. Now that Qiao Jin had made a move, of course, they had to pay special attention. They saw Qiao Jin step out of the hotel alone. The two siblings looked at each other. After leaving a tip, they got up and prepared to follow Qiao Jin. Qiao Jin came out of the hotel and saw a Bentley slowly driving over. It was not surprising to see such a luxurious car in this area. The surprising thing was the person inside. In the car, Ardan was in disbelief. "Young master, do you think Miss Qiao won't suspect anything if we deliberately stay in this hotel? What does she need to suspect?" The man in the car had a perfect and intoxicating smile on his face. When he saw the familiar figure outside the hotel, the gentleness in his eyes gradually increased. "She knows that I will come to find her, from the perspective of a friend." Ardan was speechless. He suddenly understood what the young master meant. Just like the famous saying of the century, "You are a good person. Right now, you're my friend, so you should have about the same level of destructive power, right?" Yet, young master was actually using this method to slowly conquer her. TSK, how terrifying. Sure enough, Qiao Jin appeared at the entrance of the hotel. Opening the car window, the man seemed to carry a clear chill, dispelling the summer heat wave, bringing a particularly fresh and intoxicating feeling. He saw Qiao Jin standing outside. "It's very hot outside. You can just wait inside." Qiao Jin walked forward. "I didn't purposely wait for you. When I was about to go out, I felt that you were coming." The other, Song Yanqing, was not embarrassed at all. His noble temperament remained unchanged. "It seems that I'm more important. You originally planned to go out, but changed your mind when you heard that I was here." Qiao Jin thought about it and nodded. He wasn't wrong. The other, awesome. She was just a little curious about Duan Ruyan. She had predicted that her life would not be in danger. Since Song Yanqing was here, she must have come to see Song Yanqing. "Why are you here?" She lowered her head and asked. She opened the car door and let Song Yanqing out. In the past, this kind of work was done by Ardan. When Ardan saw Qiao Jin's behavior, he naturally would not be so ignorant as to say "I'll do it." If he really did that, perhaps he would not be the chief bodyguard by the young master's side tomorrow. Ardan thought sadly. Chapter 307. Song Yanqing stepped out of the car, and his tall and straight body stretched out. In an instant, he was taller than Qiao Jin by a head. His graceful and powerful aura quickly attracted the attention of the pedestrians on the roadside. Everyone looked at this Asian man who suddenly appeared, and even the foreigners had a stunned expression. Beauty was really appreciated by the whole world. If there was a difference, it must be that your degree of beauty was not enough. Song Yanqing slightly lowered his eyes to look at the girl next to him and said, "This time, there is a company activity and signing a contract. My father asked me to deal with it." "Are you, sir, asked you to deal with it in the country?" "Oh." Qiao Jin expressed that he understood. The two siblings, who originally wanted to follow her, hid in the hotel lobby. Looking at the situation outside, it was not good to go out. Zhongli Peining saw Song Yanqing, and her eyes showed incomparable amazement. "Is that the young master of the Song family?" The other party was tall and straight like a pine tree, and his temperament was even better. Coupled with that pillously perfect face, there was really no better adjective to describe him. Zhongli Shiyu's expression was a little strange. Compared to the principle of the same sex repelling each other, he only noticed that the way Song Yanqing and Qiao Jin spoke was actually particularly intimate. Seeing his sister's infatuated look, He immediately warned, "The one beside him is that woman." Not to mention Song Yanqing's identity, just that woman alone was not to be trifled with. Zhongli Peining glanced at her brother and rolled her eyes. "What do you think I'm thinking? Everyone loves beauty. Have you ever seen someone as beautiful as her? Can I take a few more glances? Don't worry, I know what I'm capable of. I don't have any thoughts about this kind of immortal level man. He is especially compatible with immortals, so he and Qiao Jin are so compatible." Although Zhongli Shiyu knew that his sister did not have any thoughts that she should not have, hearing her belittle herself like this, he was still a little uncomfortable. "Who said that? You're so beautiful, how do you know you're not worthy of him?" Zhongli Peining asked him meaningfully. "Brother, compared to Qiao Jin, who is prettier?" Zhongli Shiyu answered without hesitation, "You're beautiful." Actually, she couldn't say whether she was beautiful or not. Qiao Jin and Zhongli Peining were totally different. Zhongli Peining was very happy. "Of course I'm happy to hear that. But I know in my heart that it's not that I'm not as good as Qiao Jin, but that Qiao Jin is too rare." She looked at the two people outside and said, "When I first met her, I was already thinking about how popular she would be if she entered the entertainment industry." Zhongli Shiyu, the two of them looked outside the door. At this moment, Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing were already planning to come in. She thought for a moment and said, "The air conditioner is on inside." The air conditioner was turned on because it was too hot. It was just the right temperature for them, but for Song Yanqing, it was too cold. Song Yanqing chuckled. "It's okay. It'll only take a few minutes to enter the room. Ah Yi, go in and help me with the accommodation procedures first." Ah Yi said, "Okay." Although it was said to be the accommodation procedures, it had already been arranged when they came. They only needed to take the room card. The hotel they were staying in was also a 5-star hotel. Its reputation was not too well known, but it was enough for their selection criteria. The hotel manager knew that Song Yanqing had come and planned to personally receive him. Ah Yi went to greet him and did not make a big fuss. Chapter 308. The hotel's air conditioning was indeed very cold for Song Yanqing, but his body had been slowly changing recently. He was no longer as cold as before. A few minutes later, they went upstairs together. Qiao Jin naturally followed him to his suite. Of course, he was just a guest. Zhongli Peining and Zhongli Shiyu naturally wouldn't follow. Seeing this, Zhongli Peining was particularly curious. Are they really boyfriend and girlfriend? Why does the information show that they haven't seen each other many times? Zhongli Shiyu, ever since the monitoring group lost her tracking record in the WeChat group, I don't believe that the spirit group has investigated any information about her. Zhongli Peining, upstairs, Song Yanqing asked Qiao Jin, "What were you going to do just now?" Qiao Jin thought for a moment and said, "I saw a particularly interesting person. I just wanted to follow and see what the other party's situation was." Song Yanqing entered the room and continued to ask with slight interest, "An unawakened spiritual reader? Or a demonized spiritual reader?" Qiao Jin nodded. "It could be. Everything you said is possible." Song Yanqing instantly understood. It could be an unawakened spiritual reader, but it could be a demonized spiritual reader. That would be useful to her, but it wouldn't be enough for her to chase after it. It seems that it's not an ordinary spiritual reader. For you to chase after it abroad, it's either being watched by the Rakshasa world, or it's an array master or a spiritual reader. He guessed correctly. Qiao Jin didn't intend to hide it. There aren't many spiritual readers. He paused and continued, "It could be an array master." Duan Ruyan being an array master was just her speculation. Her speculation was wrong before she fully awakened. Just like when she signed up, she felt that something was useful to her. It wasn't until she saw it that she confirmed that this person was Duan Ruyan. However, there was still a group of people who hadn't arrived yet, so she wasn't completely sure. If Duan Ruyan was only one of them, then this event would give her a big surprise. Song Yanqing showed a little curiosity about not being demonized. Is there a chance to be saved when you're not demonized? There was always a process for a person to be demonized. It was not that easy for a spiritual reader to awaken. If he saved her before she was demonized, Would it be possible for her to wake up and not be demonized? Qiao Jin shook her head. It's very difficult. Those who can be demonized must have been targeted for a long time. There is also an equivalent exchange. If you want to get the ability, you have to be demonized. Stronger abilities. Basically, no demonized spiritualist can resist this temptation. There was a strong incentive for this. For example, Zhao Chunfeng, who had killed Tan Xuejia and a few others, had been motivated by the desire to avenge his parents. The cracks were already riddled with holes, and the demon had infiltrated silently. Generally speaking, 99% of psionic readers who awakened with a strong desire for revenge were demonized. She thought Duan Ruyan was probably the same. She had been bullied too much. Not to mention that she couldn't save this situation, it wouldn't end well for her to be kind and save others. Even if she could, she had a premonition that Duan Ruyan would be too late. Because she was an array master, even the demon was chasing after her. This was fundamentally different from Song Yanqing. The demon followed him for a purpose, and he could see the Rakshasa realm. Duan Ruyan couldn't see it, but she must be gradually coming into contact with the demon. Song Yanqing seemed to be able to understand this situation. He suddenly said to Qiao Jin, "Don't interfere in other people's affairs." Chapter 309. Qiao Jin looked at him curiously. "I didn't say I was going to intervene." Song Yanqing smiled. "I know, there are some things that are useless even if you intervene. If she can be demonized and she isn't strong enough, you can save her once, but not twice." Because he had witnessed the Rakshasa realm, and his ability as a spiritual speaker was forced to awaken by the Rakshasa realm, he knew how powerful the demons of the Rakshasa realm were at seducing people. They would seep into your limbs and bones all the time, just to seduce you. Once they succeeded, they would gradually lose themselves. They might even lose their sanity. Qiao Jin could ignore him back then, so naturally, he wouldn't care about others. Qiao Jin nodded. "I understand." She had existed for 10,000 years and had witnessed countless things like this. Naturally, she wouldn't do something that was thankless. However, there were demonizations in the world, and naturally there were existences like Shu Rong and Ming Chu. Thinking of Shu Rong and Ming Chu, she felt a little complicated. She said, "I don't think I've told you about Shu Rong and Ming Chu." "Song Yanqing, you can tell me now." Qiao Jin thought for a moment and told him about Shu Rong and Ming Chu. She wasn't good at telling stories, so she just told it lightly and casually, with a kind of indifference. However, in this story, one could still feel a faint sadness. After Qiao Jin finished, Song Yanqing said, "It's very shocking. It was really surprising that her obsession could be strong enough to bring her deceased husband back." "Song Yanqing, that's why you asked me that question that day." No wonder she was in a bad mood. Song Yanqing was surprised that this kind of thing could make Qiao Jin's mood fluctuate, but he also felt an inexplicable joy. To be able to make her feel touched, it probably made her understand that there were beautiful things in this world. If she stood in a high place and treated everyone the same, she wouldn't be able to feel that kind of beauty. Qiao Jin pinched his chin. "Is Ming Chu everything to Shu Rong?" "Sort of," Song Yanqing said. "Although I haven't experienced such a thing, I understand her thoughts. You said that she has no parents, and her life has not been smooth sailing since she was young. This world is only a burden to her. For the sake of living, she can't feel that there are more beautiful things in this world because just trying to survive is squeezing all her time." He explained gently, as if he was unfolding a picture of Shu Rong's life. Meeting Ming Chu was the most beautiful thing in her life. Because there was someone who had brought her everything and brought her to appreciate the beauty of life. If this person was no longer around, it would be equivalent to destroying her. No one knew whether tomorrow or an accident would come first. This could only be said to be the sorrow of fate. If there were no accidents, perhaps they would live like this for the rest of their lives. Perhaps they would gradually wear each other down and quarrel. Perhaps by then, Shu Rong would no longer be so stubborn. However, there were no ifs in life. Everything disappeared at the right time. This was fate. Qiao Jin shook his head and sighed silently. "She gave me an umbrella, and before she left, she gave me a gift. I don't think what I did was worth it. I don't understand her thoughts, but I will cherish them. This was the kindness of the other party, which made her feel different. She had no reason to ignore it. Song Yanqing curled the corners of his lips, like a cool breeze and bright moon. Perhaps this is the reason she wanted you to know. She is a good person. Chapter 310. Qiao Jin nodded. Just like you. Song Yanqing. All right, at least in her heart, the meaning of being a good person was not ordinary. When night fell, Qiao Jin saw the Musilian brothers who had returned. Musilian saw her and said, "Big brother is very unhappy that you did not look for him when you came to America. He wants you to video call him tonight and let him see if you have become ugly." This did not sound like something Mu Chiji would say. Obviously, Musilian was bullshitting. Musichu shot a cold look at Musilian and said quickly, "Big brother wants you to call him." Qiao Jin nodded. "I will." Musichu asked, "Are you really not going to change rooms and sleep with others? Are you used to it?" It was not that they looked down on the students who shared a room with Qiao Jin. It was just that Qiao Jin sleeping alone was more comfortable than two people sleeping in the same room. It was not as if they did not have the means to help Qiao Jin change rooms. Qiao Jin said, "It's fine. It's just an activity. I don't want to be special." The Mu brothers who were shot were speechless. Musilian saw the change in Musichu's eyes and immediately shouted, "I'm not going to share a room with others. If you want to stay, you can stay by yourself." The room was already booked. There was no reason to change back. Musichu took a deep breath and gave up on the idea. It did not matter what his sister thought. He really could not overcome the difficulty of sharing a room with others. Qiao Jin did not care about what others thought. She would not force others to agree with her. She went down to eat with them. They ate together. It was all arranged by the school. The teachers were afraid that these students would have their own ideas, so they still advised them to integrate as much as possible. Tonight, a large group of people would arrive, and tomorrow, they would go to school with them to start this study trip. Zhongli Peining and her brother didn't really want to come during dinner time. However, when they thought that Qiao Jin would also be there, they still came. Dinner was Western food. The Western food in this hotel was not bad, but it was torture for people who were not used to it. Qiao Jin ate quite well. During the meal, Ru Yang and the remaining 4 people finally came back. As expected, they were criticized by the teacher. The short-haired girl who was with Duan Ruyan could not help but smile and apologize. She told the teacher that they had been shopping for too long and lost track of time. Actually, the teacher had called and knew that they might be looking for an excuse. But now that they were back safely, it was fine. Of course, the teacher also noticed that Duan Ruyan's expression was not very good. At least when she returned, her expression was one of terror. The teacher asked with concern, "Student Duan, what's wrong with you?" They were not from the same school, and this teacher was not Duan Ruyan's teacher. He was just a teacher who led the school. He did not know Duan Ruyan well and did not know what situation she might have encountered. It was natural for him to be concerned. Yarrow Hongyin immediately grabbed Duan Ruyan's hand and pinched her arm to stop her from talking nonsense. Yarrow Hongyin explained with a smile, "It's nothing, teacher. We met with a small car accident on our way back. We were almost hit by a car. Duan Ruyan is timid, so she got scared." The other boys behind him also echoed in agreement. They were all college students, so the teacher did not think there was anything wrong. Hearing this, he said with concern, "Student Duan, in this case, do you need to rest for a while? I'll ask the hotel staff to send dinner to your room." Chapter 311. Duan Ruyan raised her head and looked at the teacher with a look of hope after the panic. However, the teacher really couldn't see the begging in the depths of her eyes. "Teacher." Yarrow Hongyin held her and no one else could see. She was in pain and her face twitched. "Okay. I'll go back to my room to rest." Her voice was like a mosquito. The teacher felt that she was really timid and even spoke carefully. They couldn't be blamed. It was rare to see such a thing on the campus of a key university. As for campus violence, it was difficult for the teacher to think of it. On the other side, Zhongli Peining and Zhongli Shiyu's observation skills were outstanding. Naturally, they saw something fishy. Zhongli Peining pushed her brother's arm. "Brother, don't you feel that there's something strange between the two girls?" Zhongli Shiyu also saw it, but he couldn't guess the specifics. He just frowned and said, "It's a little strange." At this moment, Qiao Jin, who was sitting at another table and eating with the Mu brothers, stood up and said softly, "Teacher, I'm Duan Ruyan's roommate. I'll send her back to rest. I'm also full." The teacher's face lit up. "Oh, right, how could I forget this? Come, student Qiao, send student Duan back to rest." Yarrow Hongyin originally wanted to say that they could send her back so that Duan Ruyan would shut up and not say anything that shouldn't be said. She didn't expect Qiao Jin to interfere. Of course, they didn't dare to go against Qiao Jin. Qiao Jin even walked in front of them and looked down at them. "Students, you just came back. You must be hungry. Hurry up and eat." Those who didn't know would think that she was concerned about them, but Musilian and Musichu felt that Qiao Jin was a little. It wasn't targeted, but if Qiao Jin was concerned about others, he wouldn't be in this state. They didn't understand the situation and could only frown and look over. Of course, those students didn't dare to refuse Qiao Jin's kindness. Okay. Thank you for your concern." Yarrow Hongyin gritted her teeth. Seeing the disregard in Qiao Jin's eyes, she couldn't help but feel indignant. Wasn't he just lucky enough to be associated with the Mu family? What was there to be proud of? Without the Mu family, he might be picking up garbage to eat. It was said that her results were not very good when she entered the school. No one knew how much money the Mu family had given her. Now that she had suddenly joined a study tour, it was either because the Mu family had bribed her or had helped her hire a famous teacher to tutor her. That was why she had such good results. If they had such resources, wouldn't they be 1,000 times more powerful than Qiao Jin? TSK. The few of them went to eat. Qiao Jin sent Duan Ruyan, who was trembling slightly, back home. She was trembling mainly because of Yarrow Hongyin's pinch. The other party didn't show any mercy. Duan Ruyan's trembling slowed down the moment she climbed onto her shoulder. Qiao Jin supported her as he escorted her back. In a low voice, she said, "Qiao Jin, thank you." His voice was already choked with sobs. She had suffered quite a shock tonight, and even had a nightmare. This nightmare was about to begin, and she didn't know how to face it. She didn't expect Yarrow Hongyin and the others to be so crazy that they actually sent her to that kind of place, that kind of naked and undisguised gaze, a group of foreigners speaking a strange language. She was like the most embarrassing person in the world. Standing there and letting them size her up, she was just a product. And she couldn't even resist. If it weren't for the teacher's urging, she might not have been able to come back tonight. Chapter 312. When she reached the room, Duan Ruyan sat in front of her bed in shock. Qiao Jin was busy in the bathroom. After a while, she saw a folded warm towel in front of her. Duan Ruyan raised her head because she was too flustered. She saw the girl's calm eyes and delicate facial features. Her temperament was like smoke. She didn't seem to be friendly, but she didn't seem to have any other intentions. Duan Ruyan took the towel and said in a trembling voice, Thank you." Qiao Jin said, "You're welcome." Duan Ruyan wiped her face with the towel. For a moment, she wanted Qiao Jin to save her. Because she was the daughter of the Mu family. But, why? No one would help others for no reason. She might even hurt Qiao Jin. Perhaps it was because of the first time, Duan Ruyan had seen many people who seemed to have good intentions but actually had bad intentions. Perhaps Qiao Jin was the same. But, there was nothing about her that caught her eye. She knew that this kind of person wouldn't do such a thing. She was not on the same level as Yarrow Hongyin and the others. Duan Ruyan was very grateful for Qiao Jin's kindness. Duan Ruyan didn't say it in the end. She had to face her own problems. "Are you hungry?" The girl's greeting was still indifferent. Her voice was steady as if there were no fluctuations. Duan Ruyan shook her head. She didn't have any appetite after what happened tonight. Qiao Jin pursed his lips and said, "Rest early. If you're hungry, call the hotel to send food over." Duan Ruyan nodded. When she lay down, she actually felt a moment of relaxation. In a foreign country, a girl she had never met actually brought her a kind of incomparable peace. Are you really willing to do this? It's too late. Look, if you don't do it now, you'll become even more miserable. You might not even be able to go back alive. Just promise me. It's such a simple thing. Hong Duan-Ruyan opened her eyes, sweating profusely. She was dreaming again. In the dream, she could not see the figures clearly. They were approaching her, and they always wanted her to agree to something. She didn't know what she should agree to. She would have dreams every night, and they would always be able to easily grasp her weakness. Every word they said would make her tremble in fear. The ferocious aura hidden in the darkness seemed to give her a sense of satisfaction. However, she always wakes up. She stared at the ceiling. In the dark environment, her pupils suddenly dilated. She did not move. The sensor light in the room did not light up, but she felt that there was someone beside her. A lively person. It was Qiao Jin. She tilted her head. The curtains blocked the light from the city outside, and the room was extremely dark. Actually, she couldn't see Qiao Jin's figure clearly. She knew that Qiao Jin was sleeping soundly. She had a perfect face, an immortal-like temperament, and an aristocratic family background. She was envious of everything he did. This life was so perfect that there was almost no flaw to be found. Perhaps in this world, there were always some people who were born to be in the clouds. She held her breath. The room was terrifyingly quiet. She did not hear any sound, not even the slightest sound of breathing. Her heart trembled. She wanted to hear more clearly. Suddenly, she heard a voice. "You can't sleep." It was Qiao Jin's voice. Chapter 313. The stone in her heart finally fell to the ground. Duan-Ruyan was a little surprised and said timidly, "Student Qiao, how did you know I was awake? Did I wake you up?" Qiao Jin said, "No, I saw you moving." Duan-Ruyan was speechless. She didn't know how Qiao Jin could see it when it was so dark. Perhaps her eyesight was naturally superior. Duan-Ruyan was still a little short-sighted. Thinking of this, Duan-Ruyan sighed again. How could a perfect person be perfect everywhere? I had a nightmare and just woke up. I'm sorry to disturb you. Qiao Jin didn't say anything. She knew what Duan-Ruyan was dreaming about. The aura of the Rakshasa realm's invasion on her body was very serious. It was easy to imagine what her nightmare was about. What was the most disgusting thing about the Rakshasa realm? It was about repeating the past over and over again, forcing you to see this tragic scene, forcing you to remember the unfair treatment you received. Step by step, it aroused hatred, making it impossible for people to escape. In the dream, the person dreaming was not the master, but the people of the Rakshasa realm. This was what Qiao Jin had once seen a demonized spiritualist who had told her. So in the end, there was no way to escape. The hope of recovering after demonization was zero. Basically, one could only become a puppet of the demon. After all, the Rakshasa realm and the real world were not two related worlds. Qiao Jin couldn't control this kind of dream infiltration. After a while, Qiao Jin slowly said, "I didn't wake you up. I just didn't fall asleep. You should go to bed early." Duan-Ruyan nodded softly. She was vaguely curious. Why was Qiao Jin still not sleeping in the middle of the night? She didn't know that Qiao Jin didn't need to rest at all. They were in the same room. As long as Duan-Ruyan made any strange movements, she would immediately wake up. In the latter half of the night, Duan-Ruyan didn't sleep much. Qiao Jin naturally didn't sleep either. However, when they woke up early in the morning, one was energetic and the other was dispirited. There was still a difference. However, there was an event today and everyone had to wake up early. Duan-Ruyan had no choice. Perhaps she was destined to lose focus during today's study tour. The last batch of students arrived 2 hours late because their flight was delayed. When they arrived, it was already late at night, so the teachers did not disturb the students who had arrived earlier. Early in the morning, everyone gathered together happily and became familiar with each other. However, it was obvious that Qiao Jin was separated from the Mu brothers. Similarly, the Zhong siblings were also separated from each other. Naturally, the Mu clan was an influential figure, and no one else could come into contact with them. Zhong Lijia was a new transfer student. He had not even familiarized himself with the school before he followed them to the event. He did not even know many of his classmates. Moreover, they seemed to be either rich or noble. Naturally, they would not strike up a conversation with them. This group of students was also divided into several factions. The professor leading the team excitedly announced today's activities. Today, we will be meeting and exchanging knowledge with students from foreign famous schools. We will have joint activities for 2 days. Everyone can learn and communicate with each other. As for the rest, just treat it as viewing the scenery. We won't be returning to the hotel at night. We'll be staying at the event venue. But we'll be back when the time comes. You don't have to bring too many things. After the professor made the announcement, the group of students cheered. Communicating with students from foreign famous schools was also building a social network. It was beneficial for the future. As long as they had the ability. Of course, those who could come here for this event didn't have to worry about this. Even someone like Duan Ruyan had excellent results. Chapter 3:14. Qiao Jin didn't find it fun to meet people. Among the large group of students, she looked around and finally determined that Duan Ruyan was her target. Because no other students had any special reactions. But she had a vague feeling that something was wrong. She was the most eye-catching in the crowd. Any special behavior would attract attention, so she had always maintained a calm state. With Musilian and Musichu by her side to help her get things, the other female students were quite envious. Musilian and Duan Ruyan might not have a sister, so they were very conscious of being older brothers. They didn't look at Qiao Jin with disdain like before. Perhaps at that time, she wasn't very good-looking. Qiao Jin thought so. When they went out, Musichu took a sun hat and put it on Qiao Jin. He said concisely, "Sunscreen." Qiao Jin looked at the sun. In fact, the sun didn't hurt her. Instead, it was good for her. The ultraviolet rays that others were afraid of were nothing in their eyes. However, Qiao Jin didn't reject Musichu's kindness. Musilian even went to buy ice cream for Qiao Jin. Of course, in order to show his elegance as the little prince of the campus, he treated everyone in the student group to one, including the teachers. Everyone was flattered. They originally thought that these people were high and mighty, but now an ice cream had closed the gap. In the past, they thought that they were all rich children, so they weren't to be trifled with. Now, they felt that they were quite approachable. "Take this. You're Qiao Jin's roommate, right? I'll treat you guys." Musilian stuffed an ice cream into Duan Ruyan's hand. Duan Ruyan took it in a daze. She didn't expect Musilian to remember her. Although she was Qiao Jin's roommate, it also meant that the other party had a good memory. Of course, if she wasn't Qiao Jin's roommate, perhaps Musilian wouldn't have remembered her. Duan Ruyan blinked. When the ice cream entered her mouth, it was very sweet. It was really sweet. The sweetness reached the bottom of her heart. She looked at the girl in the distance. She didn't turn back, but she was as beautiful as the sun, radiating light recklessly. Their group soon met up with the students from another famous school. Everyone took 3 buses in batches. Because they were all alternating, the order was messed up, and the teacher arranged it. This way, everyone would know other students at the first stop. Qiao Jin did not separate from the Mu brothers. He sat on a bus and looked at the blonde foreigners around him. In fact, the quality of foreign students was similar to that of domestic students. There were ordinary ones and handsome ones. Everyone seemed to be very enthusiastic. The first person that the foreigners had their eyes on was Qiao Jin. Some even came over to ask for Qiao Jin's phone number and wanted to have a pleasant academic exchange. However, before this step could be carried out, Musichu destroyed it. To him, any man who wanted to get close to his sister was like a pig trying to grab cabbage. Song Yanqing, forget it, except for brother Yanqing. Little did he know that his sister was sending a message to Song Yanqing with her head lowered. "Jin Jinyo, I keep feeling that something is wrong." Qiao Jin rarely sent such an uncertain tone. Song Yanqing quickly replied when he saw the message, even though he was working. Song Yanqing, what's wrong? Tell me in detail, and I'll help you analyze it. Jin Jinyo, reality is mixed with falsehood. The other party is typing. After a long time, Song Yanqing sent a message helplessly. Song Yanqing, I seem to understand the meaning of this sentence, but I don't know the story behind it. Chapter 315. It's Jin Jinyo, I'll reply to you tonight. Song Yanqing, okay. Xiao Jin looked up. Surrounded by foreigners, she suddenly whispered, Chi Chu, can you check the information of the students this time? Mu Zichu looked up at her. No, what do you want to do? Even if they were from the Mu family, the school was not run by their family. The principal and vice principal's background were even bigger than theirs. It was not realistic to check the students' information. Xiao Jin, then there's no need to ask anymore. Mu Zichu, he frowned slightly. Why do you want to know the students' information for no reason? If you want to know, I can get off the bus and ask them one by one for you. Xiao Jin, that's too troublesome. At most, you'll know who they are. Will they tell you anything else? Mu Zichu, it was not realistic, so he mentioned it casually. With his personality, he could not ask everyone's name with a cold face. Fortunately, Xiao Jin did not agree. Mu Zillion, what are you whispering about? Saying bad things behind my back. Xiao Jin, Mu Zichu, to some extent, Mu Zillion was more like Mu Xiangshan's grandson. Mu Xiangshan, who was far away in China, suddenly sneezed. The bus swayed for a few hours. Along the way, the students chatted from novelty to sleepiness. Not excluding those who chatted passionately, a few hours were not a problem. Mu Zillion and Mu Zichu had already begun to doze off. Only Xiao Jin opened her eyes and looked at the road outside the window gradually becoming barren. It was not as luxurious as the roads in the city. They were now on a desolate asphalt road, heading towards a small town. Why was the Rakshasa world so active now? She suddenly had this inexplicable thought. In her previous world, the Rakshasa world in her eyes was a world that had nothing to do with the real world. They had their own rules, and the human world had its own rules. And the current Rakshasa realm was abnormally active. Although Duan Ruyan could not see the Luosha realm, she had been entangled by demons. Those who could be entangled by demons were definitely not ordinary people. Was there something special about Duan Ruyan? Formation Master had yet to awaken. Xiao Jin paused. She suddenly thought of a possibility. However, he had to have the opportunity to verify this possibility. It was already past noon when they arrived at the small town. Everyone's stomachs were rumbling with hunger as they woke up one after another. Fortunately, the town was considered luxurious. There were cliffs around the town, and the foreign-style scenery was especially popular among the students. When everyone got out of the car and gathered together, Xiao Jin noticed that there was a spiritualist in the opposing team. Of course, she was not surprised that there was a spirit reader in a foreign country. The Zhong siblings were talking to the foreign student. Obviously, they knew each other. It seemed that the scale of the astral group was rather large. Yep, it was world-class. Once they left the small town, everyone was happy to keep each other company. With the help of the teachers, they found their respective hotels and guest houses. In addition, the small town had internet and surveillance, so the school allowed them to move freely. The foreign students went straight to the bar in the small town. This town was not small. It was a famous tourist town, and there were many tourists. There was a huge fountain in the middle of the town. It was a famous wishing square, and one could come here to make a wish. Xiao Jin did as the Romans did. Under Mu Zichu's lead, she threw a coin into the pool to make a wish. The moment the coin fell into the water, she looked at the small splash and suddenly understood something. Chapter 316. Everyone else had their own activities to do. Mu Zillion and Mu Zichu were watching Xiao Jin. They were chatting with a few foreign students. Xiao Jin didn't like groups. She liked to be alone. She found an excuse to wander around the town. Mu Zichu and Mu Zillion were worried. They couldn't monitor her all the time. They only told her to answer the phone at all times. If she met a stranger, she shouldn't talk to them, and she shouldn't go with them. She didn't wander around. Soon, she found the teachers who were also drinking in the small bar. After all, it was rare for everyone to relax. The foreign professors were generous. They drank beer and had all kinds of academic discussions with their professors. The waiter who was mixing drinks for them looked like he was listening to a book. Xiao Jin found a male teacher. When she sat down, she casually asked, "Teacher, does our school come here every year?" The male teacher was a little surprised to see Xiao Jin. He immediately replied, "Of course not. Our school activities change places every year. We also change schools." Xiao Jin: "Oh. Then can students participate in this kind of activity every year?" The male teacher said directly, "Of course not. Generally speaking, we don't recommend students to come here repeatedly. When choosing, we consider students who haven't been here before." Of course, a school was so big. Only a few dozen students would come out of tens of thousands. Even if most of the students came from good families, they would still choose to experience it. Basically, there wouldn't be a repeat every year. Xiao Jin suddenly asked, "How many times has Duan Ruyan been here?" Duan. Oh, Duan Ruyan? The male teacher was suddenly enlightened. He said, "Of course it's her first time here." Xiao Jin smiled. "Teacher, I know it's abrupt, but are you sure? Has this town been used as an event location before?" The male teacher thought seriously. "Oh, I really don't know. The teachers who lead the team every year are different. I can help you ask." This wasn't a secret. The male teacher was just a little confused. "Aren't you and Duan Ruyan roommates?" Xiao Jin smiled. "Of course we're roommates. Student Duan is a good classmate." Yes. The male teacher also smiled and said, "I remember that her grades were very good." Xiao Jin nodded. "All right, thank you for your answer." She turned around, her smile fading away. She must have been to the school in this small town. She had just been by the wishing pool when she suddenly felt Duan Ruyan's aura. She had been here before. The annual activities of this school were rarely repeated. Duan Ruyan was only a sophomore this year. How could she have been here before? With her family background and current school conditions, it was impossible for her to go abroad. She lowered her head and sent Song Yanqing a message. "It's Jin Jinyo, I know what's wrong. This is a formation. It's Jin Jinyo. She's not unawakened, she's already a demonized array master." After sending these two messages, she looked up and bumped into Duan Ruyan outside the bar. She looked a little lost and didn't know where to go. It didn't look like she was going to enter the bar. Xiao Jin saw Duan Ruyan and smiled faintly. "Student Duan, where are you going?" Duan Ruyan saw Xiao Jin and was about to say something when Yarrow Hongyin's voice came from not far away. "Duan Ruyan, what are you doing? Didn't you see the message I sent you?" Chapter 317. Duan Ruyan suddenly turned around and looked at Yarrow Hongyin. I didn't look at my phone." She was still trembling. It seemed that she was really afraid of Yarrow Hongyin. Xiao Jin looked at Yarrow Hongyin with interest. Yarrow Hongyin still didn't know what had happened to her. She still looked fierce. The moment she rushed over, she reached out to grab Duan Ruyan's arm. However, when she saw Xiao Jin, she suddenly stopped and withdrew her hand. Why was this jinx everywhere? In front of Xiao Jin, she really couldn't abuse Duan Ruyan. After all, they were classmates. "What are you doing here? Why aren't you leaving?" Yarrow Hongyin wanted to pull Duan Ruyan away. Duan Ruyan asked her, Where are you taking me?" Yarrow Hongyin glared at her with her back facing Xiao Jin. "I already said that I'll call you over if there's something. You'll know when you get there." Duan Ruyan was speechless. She was silent. Her face looked a little pale. Seeing this, Xiao Jin didn't say anything. At this moment, the WeChat in his phone kept vibrating. Obviously, Song Yanqing had replied. Xiao Jin watched Duan Ruyan being pulled away by Yarrow Hongyin before looking down at the message. Song Yanqing, an awakened demonized array master? Song Yanqing, what's going on? If it was a demonized array master, the nature could be said to be much more serious. Qiao Jin said that demonized spiritualists would gradually become violent and murderous. This was also the reason why demonized spiritualists had to be eradicated. Furthermore, an array master was more dangerous than an ordinary spiritualist. Qiao Jin wanted to type, but typing was too troublesome. He directly made a phone call. When Song Yanqing saw the call, he made a pause gesture to the person on the other end of the video call. The person on the other end was obviously a little surprised, but he still nodded and let Song Yanqing answer the call. Song Yanqing stood up and walked to the side to answer the phone. As soon as he picked up, he heard Qiao Jin's calm voice. "It's nothing serious. It just makes me feel a little strange. She should be the guide." What does guide mean? A demonized spiritual reader who works for the Rakshasa world. She's a formation master. It's a pity to let her lose her mind. The Rakshasa world usually raises such puppets in the human realm. Although they were two different worlds, since the Rakshasa realm needed a demonized spiritual reader, it must be useful. Ordinary demonized psychic masters were not worthy of the Rakshasa realm's attention, but special psychic masters were different. Qiao Jin was certain that Duan Ruyan was a demonized array master because she had heard Duan Ruyan's voice when she was by the wishing pond. She had been here before, and this was already something that was wrong. In addition, Qiao Jin saw it. "I think there's something wrong with this school event. She couldn't have come here for no reason. Maybe what happened to her in the past was true, causing her to become a demonized spiritual reader." Song Yanqing also said, "What's the matter?" Qiao Jin deduced, "It's probably campus violence." This was very common. In fact, it was a little uncommon in key universities. This kind of school had a strong academic atmosphere because the students here were all elite students. Most of them were immersed in their daily studies and were too busy. There might be people who were not pleasing to the eye, but it was rare to see such a painstaking effort to target an ordinary student. In particular, the methods used seemed very despicable. It was hard to imagine. Song Yanqing nodded. The world is big. Anything can happen. Chapter 318. That was true. After all, there were all kinds of weirdos in fortune-telling. Qiao Jin was used to it now. In the past, there was no such thing as weirdos. Now, you think Duan Ruyan is a demonized array master and has probably been here a long time ago. If you want to know why, you have to dig out her secrets. Qiao Jin. Not necessarily. I can use some means, but I think there is someone else behind her. However, it depended on the person. Sometimes, Qiao Jin would use some methods to achieve her goal, although the other party was a demonized spiritual reader. However, Duan Ruyan gave her a different feeling. There was a sense of loss in her, like someone who had been lost in the long river of time and could not find the way back. If she had really been here, then she had other reasons for approaching Yarrow Hongyin. "Qiao Jin, I'll take care of the rest myself." Song Yanqing, "Okay." After hanging up the phone, Qiao Jin keenly sensed that someone was approaching quickly from behind. However, she did not directly make a move since there was no malicious intent. "Hi." She turned around and saw a tall and handsome foreign boy. He had brown curly hair and was particularly charming when he smiled. "I heard your name is Qiao Jin." He spoke in Chinese, and it was surprisingly standard. Of course, the students here were all top students from famous schools, so it was not surprising that they were good at Chinese. This person was the foreign spiritual reader who had spoken to Zhongli Peining and her sister. Qiao Jin just said lightly, "Yes. Hello, my name is Jerson." He reached out his hand, revealing a row of big white teeth. He was bright and sunny. "Can we be friends?" Qiao Jin stared at his outstretched hand for about 3 seconds. "No." Jerson, Qiao Jin's direct and straightforward rejection stunned him for a moment, but then he smiled again. "It's okay. Maybe you are Chinese and think I'm too abrupt. Huaxia people seemed to be like this. They were more shy. Perhaps they couldn't accept him talking about making friends. In fact, in Qiao Jin's mind, only Song Yanqing could be considered a friend. Friends had to be verified before they could be together. It was too easy for Jel Sun to make friends, and besides, she did not like to make friends. They were even less interested in foreigners like Jerson. She turned around and was about to leave. Jerson thought to himself that he was not ugly after all. Although there was a huge difference in aesthetic standards between the East and the West, he was recognized as handsome. Even Asians would say that they were handsome. Could it be that he was not handsome? Jerson thought it unlikely. It probably needs some buffering agent. Thinking of this, Jerson's eyes revealed a hint of naughtiness. He stared at the ground where Qiao Jin had walked, and suddenly something seemed to be about to rise out of it. The floor seemed to be pushed up. If it was at a normal angle, Qiao Jin should have slipped and fallen. His hand even made a gesture of catching it. However, the floor that was about to jump up was pressed down by a foot. In an instant, Qiao Jin turned around. Under the calm in his beautiful deep eyes, there seemed to be a hidden blade. I don't like people who don't know their limits. If there is a next time, you will pay the price. Jerson had never seen such a gaze. That pair of eyes was bright and beautiful. The gaze was as calm as water, but it hid a turbulent current. It made Jerson's hair stand on end. Chapter 319. Jerson immediately raised his hand. I'm sorry. A wise man submits to circumstances. At that moment, Jerson realized the powerful threat of Qiao Jin. No wonder the Zhong siblings said that this girl was not to be trifled with, but they clearly told him that she had the ability to predict the future. Oh, this was a somewhat outrageous psychic. Seeing Jerson raise his hand in surrender, Qiao Jin looked away and soon saw Muzichu walking over from a distance. Muzichu also saw Jerson and Qiao Jin. He came forward and glanced at Jerson, who was now stiff and embarrassed, and asked softly, "What did he just say to you?" He looked very unhappy. Naturally, Jerson had offended Qiao Jin. "Qiao Jin, no." She asked, "Where's Qi Lian?" "They're having fun together." Who was Musilian? The little prince of disco. At this time, he must be making friends and gathering in a bar. Night was about to fall, and even the small town could usher in its own lively time. The bar was naturally the most lively place. Jerson took advantage of the time when Qiao Jin and Muzichu were talking to each other. Bit by bit, like a crab, he slowly moved away. He just felt that this Chinese girl was beautiful and pure, like an angel in the Bible. Now he felt that she might have the face of an angel, the aura of hell. Muzichu noticed Jerson's little movements and only said, "This person has a good relationship with the Zhong siblings who came with us." Muzichu was also very observant. The Zhong siblings had just transferred to the school, but he already had some impression of them in this gathering. He also noticed their conversation with Jerson just now. They had obviously known each other for a long time. They happened to know each other in different schools and even met in this event. It could only be said that the Zhong family had a wide network. Muzichu did not know about the psychic, so he did not know that there was another rule in this world. "Is that so?" Qiao Jin's response was somewhat perfunctory, but her eyes saw an interesting scene. Outside the town, a black sedan slowly drove in. It happened to be parked opposite where Qiao Jin was now. It was a small town hotel. From the car, a woman with a face full of happiness got out. Her lower abdomen was flat, but when she got out of the car, she carefully protected her stomach. Obviously, she was pregnant. On the other side, her husband, who was driving the car, carefully took care of her, looking very serious and caring. In addition, they had Asian faces, which made the people nearby take a few more glances at them out of curiosity. Muzichu followed his gaze and said, "The scenery here is not bad, so tourists come here every year. There are quite a lot of Asians, but most of them are from our country." These two were probably the same. He could tell from their auras. Qiao Jin turned his head, indicating that she was just looking around. She wanted to go back to the hotel to rest, so she went back with Muzichu. When they passed by the couple, the man just happened to come down with the luggage in the trunk. The luggage was a little heavy, and the woman said with concern, "De Xian, be careful. There are a few suitcases, don't sprain your back." When Qiao Jin and the others passed by, because of Qiao Jin's outstanding temperament, she even looked at them curiously. The man with the luggage had a bright smile on his face, It's okay, Rulan, I'm not that weak. When he finished speaking, his gaze inadvertently swept across Qiao Jin's face. Chapter 320. After returning to the hotel, Qiao Jin began to rest. The hotel this time was relatively small, so everyone had a single room. They were separated, but the soundproofing wasn't very good. The girls stayed on one floor, and the boys stayed on the other to avoid any accidents. Dozens of students stayed in 2 hotels. Because of the arrangement, a group of students stayed nearby. This time, there were only so many choices in the hotel. Musilian and Musichu had no choice. Qiao Jin lay on the bed and could hear the movements of the people next door. Of course, even if the soundproofing was good, she could still hear them. But after a while, it was a little. The flirtatious tone was mixed with strange gasps. These students were more daring than he had imagined. Of course, they were already university students, so this was normal. Ordinary people might blush when they heard this, but Qiao Jin didn't react. Humans had been like this since ancient times. It was just the act of reproduction. There was nothing special about it. However, someone couldn't bear to listen and suddenly cursed. Obviously, it scared the 2 lovebirds who were in love, and their voices quickly disappeared. There was no water in the room. When Qiao Jin went out to get the hot water, she bumped into Yarrow Hongyin coming out of the room next to hers. When she saw Qiao Jin, her face turned green and white. She didn't expect Qiao Jin to come back at this time. Shouldn't she be in town? Yarrow Hongyin couldn't explain her feelings. She subconsciously closed the door behind her. At least there was someone in there who couldn't be seen by Qiao Jin. However, Qiao Jin wasn't interested in looking at her at all. He walked past her without looking sideways. In contrast, Yarrow Hongyin was like a cooked prawn, red from head to toe. It was rare for her to know what shame felt like. Just now, Yarrow Hongyin took Duan Ruyan away, but now she was here. It had only been half an hour when Qiao Jin came back from getting the hot water. Yarrow Hongyin had returned to normal. She was thick-skinned. At this moment, she looked at Qiao Jin as if nothing had happened. Hello, Qiao Jin. Her smile was very charming, with the youthful vitality of a modern university student. However, Qiao Jin walked past her as if he didn't hear her. This made Yarrow Hongyin's smile instantly gloomy. Such disregard was like a slap to her face, bringing a certain degree of humiliation to her personality. Isn't it just climbing up to the Mu clan? Climbing up to the Mu clan? What right did she have? Yarrow Hongyin was furious, and her whole body seemed to be trembling. However, if no one paid attention to her, her actions would be as laughable as a clown's. When Qiao Jin was about to enter the house, Yarrow Hongyin suddenly heard a very cold and ethereal voice. I advise you to turn over a new leaf as soon as possible. Yarrow Hongyin was speechless. She became even more furious. What did Qiao Jin mean? What did she mean? Was it because he had hooked up with a foreign exchange student? Did she feel ashamed of it? She was just a university student. Wasn't this behavior normal? However, she didn't know that Qiao Jin's words meant something else. He meant well. If Yarrow Hongyin changed and became a good person now, there might be a chance to save herself. The death aura had already wrapped around her head. It was like the scythe of the Grim Reaper was ready to cut her. If Qiao Jin's guess was right, Yarrow Hongyin was probably going to be dead. As for why, it probably had something to do with Duan Ruyan. She just reminded him and wouldn't interfere in others' affairs. The fate of others had nothing to do with her. Chapter 321. She went into her room, blocked out the noise around her, and rested for a while. When it was night time, Musichu called her to go downstairs for dinner. Qiao Jin got up, washed up, and went downstairs for dinner. Musichu was ready to go that night. When he saw her, he said, "Don't be bored all the time. Won't it be fun if we go together?" Qiao Jin, I'm not interested. Musichu, Miss, what is the purpose of this activity? If she didn't participate in any activities and didn't interact with any classmates, what was the point of Qiao Jin signing up? Qiao Jin, because I'm bored. Musichu, instant kill. Okay, Missy's mind wasn't something that ordinary people could understand. Musichu, you really don't want to go? We'll all go to the bar in town later. Don't worry, we're all decent people. We'll just drink. If you don't want to drink, you can drink something else. I'm going too. Are you sure you don't want to go? Qiao Jin, okay. Musichu, he didn't expect Qiao Jin to agree so quickly this time. He was a little caught off guard. Musichu looked at Qiao Jin with a hint of suspicion and didn't say anything. After dinner, a large group of people went to the bar. This activity was supported by the teachers. The bar here was very formal, and it was full of tourists. It was understandable for the university students to exercise. Duan Ruyan was also in the crowd. Her face was even paler than before. Yarrow Hongyin was still standing next to her. She just didn't know who was controlling who. Duan Ruyan seemed to have noticed something. She looked up and saw Qiao Jin in the crowd. His eyes were focused in front of him and didn't seem to be looking at her. Duan Ruyan's face dimmed for a moment. Today, they booked the entire bar. Even if other tourists were here, they could drink to their heart's content. The bar was considered a large building in the town. The logo outside was very European style, and the lights at night flashed with colorful lights. However, when Qiao Jin approached, she smelled a burnt smell. It smelled like something was burned. The smell was only faintly discernible. She looked around and didn't find anything wrong. She realized something. Seeing that Qiao Jin was stunned, Musichu grabbed her arm and whispered, "It's okay, I'll accompany you." He thought that because Qiao Jin had been to a bar before, he was now resistant to such places. After all, she had been injected with drugs here before. Qiao Jin shook his head. She followed the crowd into the bar. As soon as they entered the bar, the burnt smell became even stronger, but the others didn't have any reaction. Obviously, they couldn't smell it. In that case, it wasn't their problem. He was the one who smelled the scent of the past. Qiao Jin closed his eyes. There had been a fire here. It should have been very big. The fire was very fierce, and it caused irreparable damage. Therefore, it left a deep memory of the past. She opened her eyes. Red dots flickered in her eyes. She saw a different scene. This used to be a hotel-like building. It was surrounded by closed doors. A figure was running inside, screaming miserably. "Save me, I beg you to let me out. There's a fire, let me out. Ah, I'm in so much pain, I beg you to save me, save me." Chapter 322. The mournful and desperate cries were like a lingering nightmare that lingered in her ears. She opened her eyes. The music in the bar was deafening. The enthusiastic foreign students had already started rolling. Musilian was really the most handsome boy on the dance floor. Clearly, he had developed his advantages in China. There were a few foreign female students around him. Qiao Jin looked away. She saw Duan Ruyan sitting at the side. Yarrow Hongyin was whispering to a foreign boy. She was sitting next to them, drinking a glass of something that she didn't know was alcohol. She drank it one by one like a soulless puppet. At this moment, Qiao Jin saw the male teacher she had asked during the day walking towards her. "Qiao Jin." The male teacher was very polite. "I've asked the school about what you asked me this afternoon. We did come here once for an activity, but it was a long time ago, about 20 years ago. The specific details were updated by the school many years ago. Some of them are gone, so I can't let you know more." Qiao Jin nodded and smiled. "Thank you, teacher." Perhaps it wasn't that the school didn't have any information, but that they didn't dare to release it. Naturally, they wouldn't let a student know. Musichu saw the male teacher leave and was a little curious. "What did the teacher say to you?" Qiao Jin said, "Nothing. He just asked if the school had been here before." "Why are you asking about this?" Musichu revealed a rare smile. "Are you curious about this?" "Qiao Jin, I'm just asking." She said to Musichu, "I'm going to walk around. You can go play with Qi Lian. Don't worry, nothing will happen to me." Musichu's eyes were deep. "You always do things that are out of line." She wasn't like an ordinary girl who wanted to avoid others' eyes. Qiao Jin smiled and walked towards the bar counter. Musichu didn't follow her. It was fine as long as she was within sight. There were many people and the bar was very noisy. Qiao Jin asked a few of the bar's staff in elegant and fluent English. Only then did he find out a secret. This bar used to be converted from a hotel. It was said that there was a big fire and everything was burned down. In order not to let this place go to waste, the government rebuilt the bar and business was very good. As for what was burned in the fire, no one knew. They had only moved to the small town in recent years, so there were many things that they did not know. He only knew that it used to be a hotel, but now it was a bar. This matched the memory Qiao Jin saw. Something had happened to this bar before. A hotel had been burned down. What had happened inside? Someone had probably been burned to death. In fact, it was very common for people to die in a fire, but it would not leave such a deep impression that Qiao Jin could sense it the moment he entered. Maybe something else happened. In his memory, the person who was burned to death was crying for help, but no one came to save her. A hotel wouldn't lock a person up in the hotel for no reason. 20 years ago, the school held a similar event. Her gaze gently swept over Duan Ruyan. It was enough to connect some things. 20 years ago, the person who was burned to death in the hotel was probably Duan Ruyan. In other words, it was difficult to determine whether the current Duan Ruyan was a person or not. The array formation could allow her to sense, but she could not completely know the details of what had happened in the past. What she wanted to know was why Duan Ruyan was here. Chapter 323. The school's information was confidential. As a student, she didn't have the power to obtain it directly. It was even more unrealistic to speculate with arrays. Most arrays were used to trap others. Seeing the past and knowing the future was the ability of a spiritual speaking master. Qiao Jin could set up a heaven-defying array, but he was just a demonized array master. She didn't have anything better to do. Some things, as long as one wanted to investigate, would always leave some traces. Since Duan Ruyan appeared here and had some contact with her, there must be a result of this matter. Qiao Jin asked a few students about Duan Ruyan's memories. Because these students had contact with Duan Ruyan under the circumstances she saw. Among them, there were a few boys who were close to Yarrow Hongyin. They had controlled Duan Ruyan together. They seemed to know her name, age, which department she was studying, and how her grades were. But they didn't know where she lived, where she was from, or which school she was from. They only remembered one-sided memories of the school. In other words, this memory might be fake. Qiao Jin concluded that there was definitely no one called Duan Ruyan in this student activity. She only existed in the memories of the teachers and students. As for Yarrow Hongyin, who was close to her, Qiao Jin narrowed her eyes. After this event, there would probably be 2 students removed from the school's memory at the same time. After asking around, Qiao Jin returned to her original position. Musichu knew that Qiao Jin wouldn't say anything if he asked Qiao Jin, so he didn't say much. On the dance floor, Musilian was so high that he forgot himself. This student activity didn't seem to be as boring as he had imagined. The one who roared the most reluctantly at the beginning was now having the most fun. If it weren't for Musichu's stare, Musilian would have already started flirting with one of the foreign girls. Qiao Jin glanced at him and suddenly asked Musichu, "Does he usually dance like this at home?" Musichu: I don't know. He did not attend such events. Usually, it was Musilian who went. He glanced at the Musilian on the dance floor and sighed, "That's about it." Qiao Jin: "Yes." She looked at it for a while and felt that it was not very interesting, so she said that she wanted to go out for a walk. Musichu couldn't stop her, and he was a little worried about her in the middle of the night, so he went with her. Not long after leaving the bar, Qiao Jin once again saw the couple she had seen during the day. At this moment, the woman was standing at the side making a phone call. If one looked carefully, they would be able to see that the man standing next to her had a slightly impatient look on his face. However, the corners of his lips curled into a gentle arc, as if he was extremely patient with this woman. "Oh, I know. I'll be careful. I'm on my honeymoon. Don't talk about these awful things." Zhao Rulan hung up the phone. Wei Dushuan asked her gently, "What's wrong?" Zhao Rulan sighed. "It's all about my godsister." Sigh. "Let's not talk about it." She glanced at Wei Dushuan as if she was avoiding and hesitating. After all, it was not good to talk about what had happened back then. They were already married and were now on their honeymoon. It was only the first day, and Lin Sai had called her from afar to remind her of these terrible things, which made her a little unhappy. She pinched the jade around her neck and felt a little cold. When she looked up, she saw Qiao Jin. This beautiful girl had seen him during the day, and now she saw him again. Chapter 324. Zhao Rulan was just curious. Anyone who saw a beautiful person would take a second look. But she didn't think too much about it. However, Wei Dashuan's gaze circled around Qiao Jin again, as if he could still feel the disgusting probing in the depths of his eyes. Afraid of arousing Zhao Rulan's suspicion, Wei Dashuan quickly turned his head and said sweetly to Zhao Rulan, "Your godsister called you because she cares about you. I envy you for having a sister who cares about you so much." Zhao Rulan glanced at Wei Dashuan. "Doesn't your sister care about you? I remember that they often call you. After all, she's your godsister, and you're her biological sister." Wei Dashuan's face stiffened. He was raised by a rural family, so naturally, he couldn't compare to Zhao Rulan's single-parent family. "Of course, they all care about me." Wei Dashuan quickly left with Zhao Rulan in his arms. Qiao Jin and Musichu quickly returned to the hotel. Qiao Jin received a message from the cat treasure. It was Lin Sai, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. "Missing is better than past. Hey, master. I'm sorry to disturb you, but my sister and her husband are on their honeymoon now. I don't know where they went, and my mother refused to tell me." Because of what Qiao Jin had once divined, Lin Sai had always had a knot in her heart. Now that she knew that Qiao Jin was different from before, she basically didn't send messages to Qiao Jin anymore. It was just that Zhao Rulan and Wei Dashuan had just gotten married. She watched the video of the wedding. Although it was sweet, she felt that something was wrong. Now, she could only send a message to the master, hoping that he wouldn't dislike her for talking too much. "Today, so you can only watch. Missing is better than past." The master's words were still so hurtful. "Missing is better than past. Master, will anything happen to them on their honeymoon this time?" "Today, it's hard to say. Missing is better than past. Missing is better than past. Missing is better than past. My sister is already pregnant. He can't be so crazy, right?" However, Qiao Jin didn't say anything. She thought of Zhao Rulan's belly today. Yes, she was indeed pregnant. But so what? For a person with a purpose, even if she was pregnant, it wouldn't stop his determination to a certain extent. Instead, it would become a bargaining chip to clear his name. His calculations were pretty good. Qiao Jin didn't care about this kind of thing. It was a person's life. If he could avoid it, then he would avoid it. If he couldn't, then it would be gone. It was a very simple matter. She had done her best to remind him. That night, she went to bed very early. Many students who went to the disco party came back very late. Although it was very noisy, they did not wake up Qiao Jin, who was sleeping soundly. When they woke up in the morning, the professor announced that there would be a short academic exchange today. After the exchange, they would return to the hotel in the city and then officially go to the other party school to visit and listen to the lectures of the famous professors. Musilian had gone to the disco party very late last night, but he was still in high spirits when he woke up this morning. Most students were used to staying up late to study. People with active minds basically slept very little, but it was still rare to see someone in a good state of mind like Musilian. Many foreigners gave Musilian a thumbs up. After everyone had gathered and the academic exchange was about to end, Yarrow Hongyan arrived late and complained a little. "What's going on? Why didn't anyone call me?" Chapter 325. When the teachers saw Yarrow Hongyan coming over, they were obviously stunned. After a long while, one of them said, maybe the other students forgot." These teachers were responsible for counting all the students in the morning. No one expected that Yarrow Hongyin would be left out. It wasn't until she came that they realized something. How did they miss a student? When they counted, they didn't feel that anything was wrong. When Musilian saw Yarrow Hongyin, he felt a little strange. He even teased, "She's so unpopular. Didn't anyone wake her up in the morning?" Musichu paused. The teachers didn't count. Obviously, he also didn't understand why Yarrow Hongyin was left behind. It wasn't that they knew Yarrow Hongyin, but it was the teacher's responsibility to ensure the safety of every student. The teachers wouldn't make such a mistake. Looking at the teachers' expressions, it was obvious that they didn't remember. In fact, Musichu had a very good memory. He noticed when Yarrow Hongyin didn't come. After all, there were dozens of people. Even if they were all strangers, he could roughly remember. Moreover, he could tell that something was wrong by counting the number of people. He thought that the other party had applied for leave and was late. He didn't expect that the teachers didn't call her at all. Yarrow Hongyin entered the group and looked at the people around her angrily. Even the 3 boys who were closer to her complained, "What's wrong with you guys? You didn't remember to call me when you left in the morning?" Huh. One of the boys was obviously a little confused. He said slowly, "I thought you came first." "Yeah, we didn't notice that you didn't come just now." In fact, it wasn't that they didn't notice, but they had subconsciously begun to ignore Yarrow Hongyin as a student. Of course, this wasn't intentional. Something had begun to enter the array's reincarnation point. This was a cycle of reincarnation point. It was an extremely powerful array. She could break it, but it wasn't the right time. Yarrow Hongyin was targeted. She glanced at the crowd. Duan Ruyan lowered her head, as if the things around her had nothing to do with her. She was still weak, timid, and self-abased. She didn't fit in with this group of confident college students. Qiao Jin retracted his gaze. On the other side, Yarrow Hongyin was still brooding over the fact that her teacher and classmates were not around. The people around her could only say that they had forgotten, but they could not explain why they did not think of Yarrow Hongyin at that moment. It was as if subconsciously, they did not think that there was such a classmate in this event. This made people feel a little confused, but they didn't dare to say it out loud. However, the exchange event was about to end, and everyone had to return to the hotel in the afternoon. Qiao Jin went to the teacher to ask for leave. "Teacher, I think the scenery here is very good. I want to stay here for 2 more days, is that okay?" In the face of Qiao Jin's willful request, the teacher was dumbfounded. "But there's going to be a cooperative exchange with the school soon. Don't you want to participate?" Qiao Jin was very patient. "Teacher, I know it's wrong of me to do this. The scenery here is very good. I want to stay for a while. At most, I'll return to the hotel in 2 days. Is that okay?" Her excuse was actually not sincere at all, but for some reason, the teacher still agreed. Musichu and Musilian knew that Qiao Jin was going to stay. Chapter 326. For the first time, Musilian called Qiao Fei and Mu Junming to complain. She expressed her anger at Qiao Jin's excessive behavior. "She's too irresponsible. She was the one who wanted to come to the exchange event. Now that she's in a small town, she's saying that the scenery is beautiful and she wants to stay for a few more days. What can we do?" Most importantly, all the students had left. He and his blockhead brother had to stay here to watch over Qiao Jin. There weren't many people in the bar at night. It was as sad as it could be. Those tourists who came to sightsee rarely found suitable peers. After Qiao Fei heard about Qiao Jin's behavior, he was a little surprised. After the shock, he said, "Little sister has never been abroad to see good scenery. If she wants to see it, you can accompany her. Anyway, you have nothing to do." Musilian. He immediately realized that it was useless to say this to Qiao Fei. This woman only had eyes for her daughter. Musilian said angrily, "Give the phone to Dad." Mu Junming's voice faintly came from the side. "Listen to your mother." Musilian. He hung up the phone expressionlessly. Then, he said to Musichu, "Brother, we can't leave this town." Musichu said, "If Qiao Jin wants to stay here and play, let her. Didn't we come out this time to make her happy?" Musilian. So he was the only one in this family who was resisting Qiao Jin's evil forces? When did it become like this? At this moment, Qiao Jin walked over. We're still staying in the same place. If you don't want to stay here, you can go into the city. I'll come and find you. You don't have to accompany me. Musichu, no need. We'll stay here with you. Qiao Jin, okay. Musilian, this woman was just being polite, wasn't she? Qiao Jin unexpectedly asked for leave, allowing the three of them to stay. Other than them, everyone else had left. Zhongli Peining and Zhongli Shiyu didn't expect that Qiao Jin would suddenly ask for leave. At this time, it was too late to ask for leave. They could only grit their teeth and leave first. First, they had to set up a line of sight to follow and monitor Qiao Jin. However, if Qiao Jin left their line of sight, both of them knew very well that they might not be able to monitor him. Qiao Jin saw that Duan Ruyan glanced at him before she left. Her eyes were blank, as if she was a puppet without a soul, as if she was being controlled by something. Qiao Jin knew that she would not leave. She will come back. After seeing off the school's car, Musichu turned around and asked her, "Why are you staying? Is it really because of the beautiful scenery here?" He vaguely felt that it could not be such a simple reason. Qiao Jin, the scenery is beautiful. Musichu, that afternoon, Qiao Jin noticed that Zhao Rulan was taken by Wei Dushuan. The two of them drove to the ridge of the town, probably really to see the scenery. But at the same time, the ridge was dangerous, so it was also a good time to make a move. She watched Zhao Rulan and Wei Dushuan leave from afar and raised her hand to look at her palm. Reality was mixed with falsehood, so there must be something that was real. What happened to Duan Ruyan back then? She would tell Qiao Jin herself. But Qiao Jin now felt that perhaps the two things had collided. Qiao Jin called the school teacher in the evening. "Teacher, is Yarrow Hongyin here?" "Ah, Qiao Jin, who is Yarrow Hongyin?" Qiao Jin's lips curled up. Chapter 327. Nothing, teacher. I'm just asking. After hanging up the phone, Qiao Jin looked at the time. It was about time. Although she didn't know the specific process, she could guess that Yarrow Hongyin was targeted by Duan Ruyan. That was why she disappeared. This kind of disappearance was real. She slowly disappeared from people's memories as if such a person had never existed. This kind of ability was very scary. Because it was scary, although it could be done, the price was very high, and there must be some kind of purpose. If Duan Ruyan died 20 years ago, then Yarrow Hongyin should have nothing to do with her, because at that time, Yarrow Hongyin was just a newborn or an unborn baby. Why did Yarrow Hongyin become the target? She looked at the continuous green ridge outside the town. Although the scenery was beautiful, it was also creepy. At night, no one played. Musilian went back to the hotel to eat out of boredom. He happened to mention something. I heard that the most popular bar in town used to be a hotel. There was a big fire and a Huaxia person was killed. It was abandoned for a long time and was turned into a bar. The business is good. Mu Chichu stopped eating and asked, "Where did you hear that from?" Musilian, there is a Huaxia couple here who have lived for many years. When I went to eat snacks in the afternoon, they talked to me. The old man has lived here for a long time and has no one to talk to. He is very gossipy. It is said that 20 years ago, there was also a school activity. For some reason, a student was locked in the hotel. There was a fire behind and he couldn't come out. The locals also have rumors of ghosts and gods. They were afraid. Later, the government came to modify it and it became a bar. Damn, that bar is really scary. It burned a person alive, a Huaxia person. Qiao Jin didn't expect Musilian to have this kind of attribute. She couldn't help but ask in surprise, "What's the name of the dead student?" "How would I know?" Musilian shook his head. "The old man hasn't talked to anyone for a long time. He knew that I was also here for the school activity, so he just casually gossiped with me. How can I ask who's dead?" He even rolled his eyes. Qiao Jin cut a piece of steak in the middle of the plate. "I know something. 20 years ago, our school was holding an event, and they came here. Maybe the people who died were from our school. Musilian and Musichu, what was supposed to be a good topic of conversation, started to be filled with a sinister and terrifying aura. Musilian suddenly shuddered. Where did you hear that? This was what Musichu had asked him earlier. Qiao Jin, I asked the teacher when I was bored, and the teacher told me. I don't know if anyone died, but if something like that happened, the school would definitely keep it a secret, right? Of course. Musilian's expression was grave. Who dares to announce this? He was a student, and he was burned alive in the hotel. If such a huge mistake was made public, it would at least cause some impact. But it had been too long, and they had never heard of such a thing. Qiao Jin said, Do you remember a female student called Yarrow Hongyin who was late this morning? When we left, we almost didn't take her with us. Musilian, oh, you're talking about that girl. I remember. What's wrong? Qiao Jin suddenly raised an eyebrow. Chapter 328. You remember. She had a playful smile on her lips. Musilian was confused by her gaze. Of course I remember. It seemed that when she set up the array at home, Musilian and the others were affected by more than that. Du and Ru Yang's array couldn't affect them. Musilian was insensitive and didn't understand the meaning of Qiao Jin's words. Musichu was deep in thought. Qiao Jin, why are you saying this? Qiao Jin put down his knife and fork. Why don't you call the activity director and ask him if he remembers a student named Yarrow Hongyin? Then, he got up and said, I'm going up to rest. You have to tell me tomorrow morning. Then, he left. Mu Chilian said. Why did you call the director out of the blue to tell him these things? Musichu felt that something serious was going on. He picked up the phone and called the director. The director quickly picked up. When he asked about Yarrow Hongyin, the other party's answer was exactly the same as what he had said to Qiao Jin. Mr. Mu, did you remember wrongly? We don't have a student named Yarrow Hongyin in this activity. Did you remember wrongly? You're quite concerned about Yarrow Hongyin. Your sister also called to ask, but we don't have a student with the surname Yarrow in this activity. Musichu's expression became uglier and uglier as the director answered. Musilian froze when he heard the voice from the speaker. Was he kidding? He didn't have much impression of Yarrow Hongyin, but he remembered that the teacher had called her name in the morning. Even if they had the same pronunciation, Yarrow Hongyin should be right. But now, the director said that there was no such person. How could there be such a ridiculous thing? Musichu asked several times, but the director said no. He even felt a little dissatisfied with Musichu. I'm old, but I haven't reached the point where I can't even remember a student. Musichu apologized and hung up. He and Musilian looked at each other. Both of them found it hard to understand the situation. Musilian suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. How did a living person disappear? Judging from his brother's attitude, it was obvious that he knew about this classmate. He knew about it too. But now, even the director said that he didn't know him. Musichu lowered his head and sent a message on his phone. In the WeChat group, he asked the student union to investigate the student's information and see if there was a student named Yarrow Hongyin who had participated in this study trip. However, the results came out very quickly. The people from the student union said that there was no such person in the school. Yarrow Hongyin was not mentioned in the student files. There were no names with the same pronunciation, but there was a large number of people with the surname Yarrow, but they were not related to Yarrow Hongyin. The people from the student council even asked Musichu if he had misremembered a name or a word. In other words, only the two of them remembered that there was a student named Yarrow Hongyin. The others had all forgotten about her. What kind of fantasy story was this? It couldn't be that he and his brother had misremembered at the same time, right? Then, Musilian recalled that Qiao Jin was the one who had first brought up this matter. In other words, Qiao Jin still remembered this matter. Qiao Jin. Qiao Jin went up to rest. Fuck. Musichu got up and said calmly, I might have remembered wrongly. I don't remember her name being Yarrow Hongyin. Qiao Jin must have made a mistake. Go upstairs and rest first. We'll know when we return to the hotel tomorrow morning. Chapter 329. Musilian also got up and nodded. A living person can't disappear. We must have remembered the name wrong. It was all Xiao Jin's fault for misleading them. Maybe the teacher didn't call Yarrow Hongyan at that time. Most people wouldn't believe such a ridiculous thing. Musichu saw Musilian go up and narrowed his eyes. He knew that something was really wrong. Musilian could be fooled, but he couldn't. He heard clearly in the morning that the teacher called Yarrow Hongyan. The fact was that the Yarrow Hongyan they thought didn't exist. Xiao Jin said that she was going back to her room, but she didn't. She picked up Xu Rong's umbrella and went out. The weather in the town changed quickly, and it even began to drizzle. The climate in this town was special, and it often rained. During the day, it always made people feel relaxed and happy, but at night, it wasn't so tempting. The town rested early, and people basically didn't go out at night. It was a small place, unlike the city. Behind them was a continuous stretch of flat land and mountains. At a glance, it was green, but at night, it wasn't very clear. On the wide asphalt road, a car was driving in the rain. In front of them was the road with very low visibility, and only the car's headlights were stubbornly illuminating. Zhao Rulan looked at the rainy sky, and it was late at night. She wasn't very interested. Deshuan, why do we have to come out at night? Wei Deshuan, who was driving, still looked gentle. Lan, didn't we agree that I'll take you to a beautiful place? Don't worry, I've booked a hotel there. It's just right to drive there now. If you're tired, you can rest for a while. It won't be too long. Zhao Rulan was pregnant, and she was already sleepy. She was extremely sleepy, so when she heard this, she leaned against the back of the car seat and slowly fell asleep. She was awakened by a sudden jerk of the brakes. When she woke up, it was still dark outside the car window. Her slightly sleepy eyes only heard Wei Deshuan's cold voice, which seemed to be mixed with the wind and rain. Lan, there seems to be something wrong with the car. I'll get out and take a look. Stay in the car and don't move. Zhao Rulan. Okay. She subconsciously responded in a low voice. Her mind was so tired that she did not know how to think. She heard the sound of the door closing and the door swinging. After a while, Zhao Rulan didn't hear anything for a long time. She was a little flustered. She subconsciously raised her head and looked back. She couldn't see anything through the glass of the car. It was already dark outside, and it was raining. The pitter-patter of rain was getting heavier and heavier. In this kind of weather, it even made people feel a little frustrated. Zhao Rulan was very sure that she didn't see Wei Deshuan. Dexian. She called out twice in a panic, but did not see any movement. Crackle, the raindrops fell on the car, making all sorts of noises. In this environment, she saw a tall black figure appear outside the car window. At that moment, Zhao Rulan's heart almost stopped. A shrill cry escaped from her mouth. Facing such a strange figure in an unfamiliar environment, even in the middle of the night, was enough to scare Zhao Rulan out of her wits. She instinctively wanted to crawl to the driver's seat because she saw the black figure holding something in his hand. It looked like a sharp blade. Under such circumstances, what could it be? Chapter 330. Zhao Rulan was trembling all over. Her whole body was cold and she didn't know what to do. Her tears gushed out in an instant. She screamed, Dexian. However, she knew that Dexian must be in danger. She didn't think about other situations at all. How could she encounter such a thing when she came out? Zhao Rulan scrambled to the driver's seat because she saw that Wei Dexian locked the door when he got out of the car. Why did he lock the door? At that moment, Zhao Rulan, who was extremely scared, suddenly felt cold all over when she thought of this. If he locked the door, wouldn't he get in as well? Maybe he had the key in his hand. Zhao Rulan glanced at the car and found that the car key was indeed not there. Maybe he wanted Zhao Rulan to be safer in the car. Dong, the black figure outside the window raised something and smashed it on the car window. Ah! Zhao Rulan screamed again. She looked back and saw the black figure smashing the window again and again. The ordinary car window was not protected by any safety measures. Once it was smashed, it cracked like a spider. It looked like it was in imminent danger. Perhaps in the next second, it would completely shatter. At that time, Zhao Rulan, who was in the car, would be doomed. De Xian, De Xian. At this time, Zhao Rulan couldn't think of anything else. Her tears fell down and she just called De Xian's name. Her face was completely pale. She never thought that death would suddenly come at this moment. What are you doing? Suddenly, a puzzled question came from outside the car window. Mixed with the wind and rain, Zhao Rulan almost couldn't hear it clearly. She could only hear a girl's voice in a trance. However, the figure who was smashing the car window stopped. Run, run, call the police, call the police. Zhao Rulan used all her strength to shout as loudly as she could, hoping that the girl who suddenly appeared could call the police for her. At least there was still a chance to save her. This person definitely wanted to kill her, absolutely. Through the rain, she saw that there seemed to be two figures standing outside. How could there be two figures in such a place in the middle of the night? Although this was a tourist attraction, there weren't many people, especially abroad. Basically, no one would come out in the middle of the night. Tonight, Zhao Rulan admired herself for being able to think about these things at this time. When the black figure saw the two girls who suddenly appeared, and both of them had huaxia faces, he was obviously a little flustered. What was even more unexpected was that he could still step forward when he saw that the situation was not right. One of them looked weak and timid. The person beside her seemed to have no soul. She just stared blankly at the black figure. She looked even more sinister than the person who was about to commit murder. He was obviously a little flustered. He had a huge axe in his hand, and he had just used one end of the axe to smash the window. As long as he killed the woman inside, his mission would be complete. And now, the other two girls in front of him still asked patiently, "What are you doing?" The other party seemed to know that he was a foreigner and spoke in English. Wei Deshuan was also lying on the ground. He had been knocked unconscious by a man with an axe. When acting, one had to be thorough. After all, what was done. Thinking of this, the black figure decided to go all out. He raised his axe and rushed towards the two Chinese girls. Chapter 331. In the wind and rain, only the woman's shrill screams could be heard. Zhao Rulan was scared out of her wits when she saw the black figure slashing the two girls with a sharp weapon outside the window. This was the first time Zhao Rulan had seen such a murder scene. It was beyond her understanding of more than 20 years. She was pregnant. How could she encounter such a thing? She didn't even faint. She could only watch as she died. This made Zhao Rulan feel even more hopeless. Screech, suddenly, there was a soft sound. Zhao Rulan was stunned. Suddenly, she saw a small lock pop out of the originally locked window. This was a sign that it had been opened. She subconsciously pulled on the door buckle. The door opened. At that moment, Zhao Rulan almost fell into an unbelievable ecstasy. She turned around and saw that the black figure was still killing the two girls. What was strange was that even under such circumstances, there were no cries of agony. It made one's hair stand on end for no reason. Zhao Rulan, who was in extreme fear, couldn't feel this abnormality. She almost exploded with the greatest will to live. She opened the door and ran out. She ran so suddenly that the black figure didn't expect her to get out of the car. He was stunned for a moment. When he looked down, he saw two corpses on the ground. One of the girls was twitching. Her leg had been cut off, but she couldn't make a sound. Her expression showed that she was in extreme pain. Blood mixed with the rain. Her eyes were wide open. She seemed to be unwilling to accept this. Slowly, she breathed her last. The other girl's waist was only cut by him. Blood seeped out, but her face was very clear. Her eyes were staring straight at him. This made the perpetrator's hair stand. He couldn't care less about the two people who couldn't escape. He chased after Zhao Rulan with the axe. She had to run back. Zhao Rulan ran on the asphalt road. Her body and mind were completely broken. However, she felt that something was protecting her. It didn't make her legs go weak and stop. Her stomach hurt a little. It was probably because the child was affected. But she couldn't care less. She knew that she wouldn't survive today. There was no hope for the child. There was something burning in her heart. If Zhao Rulan could lower her head, she would see that the Buddha jade pendant that her mother had asked for was shattering bit by bit. She heard the footsteps behind her. Her tears flowed uncontrollably. She was terrified and desperate. The town in the distance flickered with a dim yellow light. As long as he ran closer, there would be some hope. Help, help! Zhao Rulan screamed for help in English. Anyone who heard her heart-wrenching voice would know how desperate she was. However, the black figure behind her was getting closer and closer to Zhao Rulan. She could almost hear the man's approaching footsteps. Her strength was almost exhausted, and she was holding on with her last breath. If she died here, then it would all be over. She had just married Wei Dashuan and was pregnant with a little life. How could she die like this? In a trance, she seemed to recall the words her mother had said when she gave her the jade pendant, "There's always a what if. I'm doing this for peace of mind. Just take it with you. I've already agreed to your marriage. Don't tell me that in order to ensure your safety, you can't even let your mother feel at ease." Chapter 332. Perhaps her scream was loud enough, or perhaps someone in the town noticed it and didn't ignore it. Soon, a few patrolling police officers appeared on the streets of the town connected by the asphalt road. The moment he saw the police appear, the man in black who had almost caught up with Zhao Rulan turned around and ran. Obviously, he knew that there was no benefit in fighting with the police, and foreign police were usually equipped with guns. Help, help! The moment she saw the police, Zhao Rulan felt that it was the most exciting moment of her life. She wasn't even excited about marrying Wei Dashuan. At that moment, the police were like her second parent. The police also noticed the man in black chasing behind Zhao Rulan and immediately shouted, "Stop, don't move." Unfortunately, the man in black ran too fast, and the police shot directly. Unfortunately, their shooting wasn't very accurate, and the man in black still ran away. Some police officers chased after him, and someone on the other side caught Zhao Rulan who was running over. She cried like a dehydrated fish, and when she ran into the arms of the police and was helped up, she felt something break with a crack. She lowered her head and saw that a few pieces of jade had fallen off her body. She was stunned for a moment before falling to the ground and bawling her eyes out. In the wind and rain, a girl was quietly holding an umbrella not far away, watching this scene. She also saw the man in black running away. If someone approached, she would find that the umbrella didn't just help her block the rain, but also seemed to be a transparent barrier that prevented anything from entering. Her body was clean, not even a drop of water. She tilted her head and returned to the hotel. Zhao Rulan wasn't dead. Her fate line had changed. The 1 million yuan had played a role in the end. It wasn't money that saved her life. The 1 million yuan was helped by the master to help poor children, and there was a blessing. This blessing protected Zhao Rulan and allowed her to escape. However, this might only happen once in a lifetime. She wasn't dead now, but if she couldn't recognize Wei Dashuan, she would still be doomed. It all depended on the results of the police investigation. Back at the hotel, Zhao Rulan's scream had already woken up everyone in the town. Everyone turned on the lights, not knowing what had happened. When Musichu woke up, he bumped into Xiao Jin, who had just come in. He frowned and asked, "You went out?" Xiao Jin replied without batting an eyelid, "I went to the washroom." "Musichu, isn't there a bathroom upstairs?" He knew that Xiao Jin was lying through his teeth. His face darkened. "I don't like it when you hide too many things from us. I'm your brother now. I'm worried about your safety." "I know," Xiao Jin answered calmly. "I'll be fine, I can promise you that. However, there are many things that are not suitable for you to know now." "Musichu, are you referring to the fact that everyone has forgotten about Yarrow Hongyan except for the three of us? Why is that?" He was very smart and would always be able to guess some things. Musichu said, "There are many strange things in this world, right? It's just like when you took drugs and got better instantly. Even the doctors couldn't tell what was wrong with you, just like how you saved Brother Yanqing." He looked at Xiao Jin, his calm eyes scrutinizing and a hint of anger. He was angry, which was rare. Qiao Jin was still calm, as if he was listening to Musichu talk about something unimportant. Chapter 333. Qiao Jin said, "You know that I won't tell you." It was not in the same world, so Qiao Jin would not let the Mu family know for the time being. Musichu said, "I will always be suspicious. Mom and the others just don't ask. It's not that they don't want to know. You can't hide it from us forever." Qiao Jin said, "It's not that I can't do it." Musichu, he looked at Qiao Jin, and there was a trace of disappointment in his eyes. "What kind of existence are you? In fact, you have never put our family in the same position. Can I ask, who are you? You are not Qiao Jin, are you?" This question was actually very interesting, because Qiao Jin had known that Musichu would ask it. She just said, "I am Qiao Jin." She used to be Qiao Jin, and she was still Qiao Jin. The Qiao Jin in her life was one of her consciousnesses, and he was also her. However, after combining other consciousnesses, kindness might only have a very low position in her heart. She respected everything as cause and effect, and implemented an equivalent exchange. She did feel like she was not involved. Just like how they had always felt, she seemed to be in another world, on another level. Musichu suddenly calmed down, and the turbulent undercurrent gradually subsided. He asked softly, "Are we family in your heart?" Qiao Jin was silent for a moment, and then nodded. They were family. However, in just a few months, Qiao Jin had learned a lot. They were very cute, which was Qiao Jin's feeling. Having a family in this world was something she had never thought of before. Therefore, she did treat the Mu family as her family. However, because of her personality, she felt that she was a part of their family, but she could not express it in other ways. Under her protection, they would not be hurt, which was the best explanation. She did not tell Musichu for his own good. Another world had its own set of rules. If he knew too much, he would be targeted by others. Musichu sighed slowly and nodded. "I understand." Then, he did not ask any more questions. Since she still didn't want to tell him, he didn't want to force her. This was the only thing an older brother could do. Because she did not seem to need their protection. Zhao Rulan's incident caused a stir in the entire town. Everyone knew that a homicidal maniac had appeared. The police followed the man in black's trail and found Zhao Rulan's car. They also saw the unconscious Wei Dushuan. However, according to what Zhao Rulan said later, there were still 2 girls' corpses at the scene. However, the police only found the body of a short-haired Chinese girl at the scene. In other words, there was still 1 missing. Moreover, the culprit had not been caught. This incident caused panic in the small town. After all, no one would have expected such a vicious murder to occur in such a peaceful town. The police chased the man in black for a long time that night, but they could not find him. However, according to the clues, he might have escaped back to the town. In other words, he might be a tourist or a local resident. This time, the police station took it very seriously. They were afraid that he was a serial killer, and they even transferred police from other places. Everyone had to investigate these 2 days, and the tourists in the town could not leave for the time being. Even if they wanted to leave, they had to be cleared of suspicion first. Zhao Rulan fainted in fear that night and woke up early the next morning. Chapter 334. She called her parents as soon as she woke up in the morning. When her mother heard that Zhao Rulan almost had such a big accident, she almost fainted from fright. Later, Zhao Rulan said that her jade pendant was broken. After hearing the whole story, her mother cried out, "It's really God's blessing. We met a real master who saved your life. If the other party hadn't offered to donate 1 million yuan to the temple, there wouldn't have been this jade pendant." Whether or not Zhao Rulan would have escaped was another matter. Even if the whole thing seemed to have nothing to do with the jade pendant was broken without touching it. It was as if it had blocked a disaster for Zhao Rulan. At this time, Zhao Rulan was still in doubt. Is it really because the master saved my life? What are you still doubting? This must be a real master. Not only do you have to thank him, But you also have to thank your sister Sai. If it weren't for Lin Sai's insistence that this master was very effective, Mother Zhao wouldn't have asked for this jade pendant for Zhao Rulan. Now that her daughter was protected in the hospital, Mother Zhao was relieved and finally asked Wei Dushuan, what was he doing last night? Zhao Rulan thought of the police's statement and said, Dushuan was knocked unconscious by the murderer when he got out of the car last night, so he couldn't save me. He almost lost his life. Mother Zhao concluded, I don't believe it. Zhao Rulan was shocked. Mother Zhao said, when you said that you wanted to travel here, I felt strange. You also said that this place was proposed by Wei Dushuan. Why did he choose this place and take you to see the scenery in the middle of the night? What scenery? Why did the car break down at this time and you got out of the car to check? The murderer had a sharp weapon to smash the window to kill you. Why didn't he kill Wei Dushuan first? Wasn't he afraid that Wei Dushuan would give evidence against him after he woke up? This isn't right. Zhao Rulan originally didn't doubt Wei Dushuan. Now that she was questioned by her mother, she was stunned and couldn't find a point to refute. Yes, how could it be so coincidental? She was also highly educated and her brain wasn't bad, but she didn't think of some things at all. After thinking of this, she asked the police. The police said that Wei Dushuan hadn't woken up yet and told her directly, Madam, we also suspect that your husband has something to do with this matter. The murderer didn't have any means of transportation at the time, which means that he might have just happened to pass by, or he might have deliberately waited there. According to the situation at the scene, we think that the second scenario is the most likely. The murderer who deliberately waited there to kill you would definitely not leave you alive. The idea of killing you first and then killing your husband is also not big. Normally, the murderer would choose to kill your husband first and then silence you. Otherwise, your husband would wake up halfway and have a high chance of escaping. And he was only knocked out, of course, we only suspect. To some extent, the police's suspicions were normal, especially when Zhao Rulan saw Wei Dushuan lock the car door. It seemed like he was protecting her, but who knew if he was preventing her from escaping easily? At that time, the car door was locked, but it was unlocked for no reason. After that, she wondered if her husband, who had woken up halfway, had unlocked the door. However, the police said that the key had fallen on the ground and was stained with blood. The traces were not destroyed, which meant that her husband had not touched the key again. Zhao Rulan was completely shocked. Chapter 335. Musichu and Musilian were also implicated and couldn't leave the town. Musilian didn't know what had happened. He only felt that everything was strange now. He said to Musichu, I suddenly feel that we shouldn't have come. He should have been in China, dancing happily, and not here. First, he encountered a supernatural ghost story, and now, there was a murder case. Musichu said, we're already here. Musilian, in other words, it had already happened. No matter how much they regretted it, it was useless. The only thing they could be thankful for was that it didn't happen to them. Because of their special identities, Musichu informed the school. After the school learned of the situation, they contacted the local police station. After the police station ruled it out, they said that the school could pick them up the next day. However, what they didn't expect was that the school actually called the police and said that a student had gone missing. They said that the missing student was a classmate called Yarrow Hongyin. In other words, she had been remembered. They were almost shocked to find that no one had any special opinions about Yarrow Hongyin's disappearance. The only difference was that when they woke up early in the morning, the teacher suddenly remembered, right, there was still a classmate called Yarrow Hongyin. The team checked and found that Yarrow Hongyin was gone. They were so scared that they hurriedly called the police. The local police did an autopsy on the dead Chinese girl and confirmed that she was the missing Yarrow Hongyin. A student came here and was killed. The activities director's hair fell out at that time. It's over, something big has happened. The group of students exploded. All the students were in a panic and didn't dare to stay abroad any longer. The activities were forced to end early. The school directly chartered a plane to pick up this batch of students. At least, there couldn't be anything else. Qiao Jin and the others were also ordered to return to China. The car to pick them up would arrive that night. The activities director couldn't understand why he couldn't remember that there was a classmate named Yaro Hongyin in his team when Musichu and the others called. Xiao Jin was in the hotel. She received Lin Sai's gratitude that contained incomparable excitement. She knew about her godsister. Her mother and Mother Zhao would arrive at this place tomorrow to pick up Zhao Rulan. Wei Dashuan was temporarily controlled because he was a suspect, but he insisted that he didn't have such absurd thoughts. Because there was no conclusive evidence and the murderer hadn't been caught, the police could only let him go for the time being. However, Lin Sai Liao concluded that there was something wrong with his brother-in-law. She believed in the master and almost instantly understood that all of this was arranged by Wei Dashuan. She only asked her mother to quickly take her sister back to the country and not let her contact Wei Dashuan again. At this time, Zhao Rulan had already fallen into deep self-doubt. After experiencing a life-and-death situation, she seemed to understand a lot. She didn't resist her mother's decision too much. However, Wei Dashuan insisted on leaving with Zhao Rulan. He cried and said that he didn't know anything. Zhao Rulan's suspicion was on the verge of collapse. In this way, Mother Zhao directly decided not to leave. She transferred Zhao Rulan to a nearby city and hired bodyguards to watch over her 24 hours a day to ensure that there wouldn't be any accidents. On the one hand, she deserved to be investigated by the police. She wanted to see how long this Wei Dashuan could hold on. At this time, Xiao Jin saw a girl come in from outside the hotel. She seemed to have an inferior and timid look. When she saw Xiao Jin, she revealed a pale smile. Student Xiao. Chapter 336. She was Duan Ruyan. Xiao Jin said, "Your array has been broken." But the person she wanted to bring back was killed, and there was a gap in her array. Duan Ruyan just smiled. Xiao Jin asked her slowly, "Why are you trapped here?" Duan Ruyan said, "Because I betrayed the demons." Xiao Jin raised his eyebrows slightly. He had never heard of anyone who could betray the demons. Duan Ruyan still looked cautious. At this time, there was even a shy smile on her face. However, this kind of shyness was like a purity that had not been polluted by the big dye vat of society. When she came to the city and faced everything new, she was cautious and shy. Xiao Jin said, 20 years ago, you died here, burned to death by fire. It must have been very painful, right? I know. When he smelled the strong smell, he could also feel the bone-deep despair. How terrible it was for a person to be burned alive. Duan Ruyan said, I was indeed dying at that time. She softly talked about the past. At that time, I was bewitched and awakened. I originally had the ability to escape, but when I faced those people, I didn't do it and didn't complete my revenge. My performance made the demons very dissatisfied, so they trapped me in this realm, day after day, year after year. They used my ability to achieve their goal for them. Xiao Jin said, why didn't you do it? As long as she did it, her demonization would be complete, and she would have taken her revenge. She would probably be free. It's the same purgatory. Which one do you jump to? Duan Ruyan showed a gentle smile. I came to you today to ask for your help. I know you can help me get out of this vicious circle. Xiao Jin said, then you should know that I don't get involved in other people's karma. This was the reason why she didn't choose to save him. Duan Ruyan said, I know, so I will give you something that will satisfy you. I am an array master, and I work for the demons. The demonized spiritual seed I have is better than other wizards. I know you need it, so I will give it to you. With her words, the world began to slowly darken, and the surrounding airflow became more and more obvious. The demons of the Rakshasa realm appeared more and more clearly. They looked at Duan Ruyan and roared at Xiao Jin with ferocious expressions. Some devils even gradually grabbed Duan Ruyan's body. Xiao Jin saw that she was almost completely corroded by the Rakshasa realm. Although she didn't demonize back then, she wasn't too far off. This was also the reason why she was trapped. For the rest of his life, he would never be free. Everything in the world had rules. Duan Ruyan had chosen to agree at that time, but she had failed to do so. That was the price she had to pay. Xiao Jin said, The devils of the Rakshasa realm can't do it directly. Who trapped you? Duan Ru Yang looked at her and was a little surprised. Then she smiled and said, "You are indeed more powerful than I thought, but he is very scary." Duan Ruyan's face twisted. She was most likely terrified of the person she had set up the rune. Qiao Jin raised his eyebrows slightly. "Maybe I know who it is." Duan Ruyan actually didn't know what Qiao Jin was. She just felt that Qiao Jin could save her. Qiao Jin could indeed save her, but she felt that there should be a chain of interests behind it. Duan Ruyan was part of the chain of interests. Yarrow Hongyan wasn't the first. If Duan Ruyan didn't disappear, she definitely wouldn't be the last. These people who disappeared all had their uses. Duan Ruyan's body was already on the verge of collapse. The other side was forcing her to return to the starting point. She couldn't resist anymore. She looked at Qiao Jin with a hint of pleading in her eyes. "Please." Chapter 337. It was just that she was living in another form, in a state that was neither human nor ghost. The demon at that time had deceived her. It was already a few days later that she wanted to take revenge. The fire burned down the hotel, and her body was dug out from the body. The bloody handprints she left on the door caused quite a bit of panic among all the students at that time. Some were afraid, while others were terrified. They all knew that the staff had left without informing them because they had said that no one was in the hotel. Duan Ruyan did not know where the phone was, and she did not know who to inform. The school then sent people to rescue the group of students and covered up the matter. No one paid for Duan Ruyan's death. The school only said that she had died in an accident. Out of pity, they informed her parents and compensated her parents with hundreds of thousands of yuan. At that time, her parents were almost completely disheartened. Why did I stop taking revenge? At that time, I wanted to find someone else, but I found some strange energy in their house. I couldn't get in, so I went to find the teacher. She saw that group of people bullying Duan Ruyan. Because she was afraid of the student's family background, she pretended not to see it. However, when she went to find the teacher, she saw the teacher holding her newborn daughter and crying silently while looking at her photo. At that moment, she was touched. I might be stupid, but I know that she had no choice. She also had her own daughter. If I killed her, her daughter would lose her mother, so she gave up on revenge. She was a demonized array master. If she gave up on revenge at the first stop, she could not talk about revenge later. Because of that, she was trapped here and became a puppet of the demon. Someone secretly controlled her and made her the one who delivered the sacrifice. She did not know what a sacrifice was. She only knew that she would appear at this time every year and take away a person, perhaps anywhere. This year, she happened to return to the starting point and met Qiao Jin. Perhaps this was the difference. Duan Ruyan had a premonition that all of this would happen to Qiao Jin. Sacrifice. Qiao Jin chewed on the word and frowned slightly. Sacrifice was not a good word. It was obvious that it was used to do unreasonable things. It was certain that his old enemy was still alive. If he was still alive, then it would not be strange for him to do these things. He did not have Qiao Jin's ability to use the demonized spiritual seed as a shield. Furthermore, it was very difficult to obtain the demonized spiritual seed. It might not be available at all times. He would find the most convenient way, and this convenient way was to use humans as sacrifices. In his eyes, humans were no different from livestock. Therefore, out of the two array masters, Qiao Jin was able to become the strongest, but he was like a rat hiding in the gutter his whole life, unable to show his face. Thinking of this, Qiao Jin's eyes flashed with a cold light. 10,000 years ago, they were rivals, and he did not do anything for them. Now, he still did not do anything for them. Karma had even taken away his life. Who knew how many lives he had taken over all these years? After reading about Duan Ruyan's past, she roughly knew what was going on. She thought for a moment and said, when it started, it should end. She would be freed the same way she died. Duan Ru wanted to laugh, I know. Not far away, the bar was on fire again. Amidst the flames, Qiao Jin noticed that there was no one inside. Now that the firefighting facilities were in place, it was enough for everyone inside to escape. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.